Yo, check this. Marshall, Michigan, summer of 2009. A sleepy little town where everyone's in everyone's business. The kind of spot where folks don't even lock their doors and kids run wild till the streetlights pop on. But on July 25th, the whole vibe shifted. Jennifer Martinez, just 18, and with her whole life ready to launch, straight up vanished. Hours later, they find her in some busted, abandoned crib on the edge of town, and she'd been done dirty, sliced up bad. No witnesses, no suspect, nothing but a wrecked family and a town that would never sleep sound again. For 15 years, this case was colder than a morgue slab, just files collecting dust, while Jennifer's family was living in a nightmare, wondering who jacked their daughter's life and why. But this is where the script flips late 2023. Some next-level DNA tech that wasn't even a dream back in 2009 blows this thing wide open, pointing a finger at a killer who was hiding in plain sight the whole damn time. Somebody no one ever peeped. Someone who lived right there, worked next to him, passed him in the grocery aisle. When the cuffs finally clicked in January 2025, it sent a shockwave through the whole town and proved that justice might be slow, but it's always coming for you. Drop a 1 in the comments if you mess with this kind of story, cause we're about to take a hard dive into the grimmiest corners of small-town America and show you how one family's refusal to quit finally put a monster in a cage. Jennifer Martinez wasn't just some number on a file. She was a real one, with dreams way too big for a town like Marshall, Michigan. Born in 1991 to Karen and Robert Martinez, Jennifer came up on the south side, the grind side of town, where dads put in work at the auto plants and moms hustled 2 jobs to keep the lights on. She was the oldest of 3 her little brothers, Tyler and Brandon, thought she hung the damn moon. Jennifer just had this fire, you feel me? The kind of person who walks in a room and suddenly, it's lit. Her mom, Karen, said later that she always knew her daughter was different. Not in some fantasy way, but for real. Jennifer made everyone she met feel like they mattered, like they were seen. By the time she rocked that cap and gown from Marshall High in June 2009, Jennifer had her future on lock. She was in at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, just a half-hour ride away. She was going to major in elementary ed, because she was great with kids and wanted to teach. That summer was supposed to be epic, stacking paper at the local diner, kicking it with her crew, just living up those last free and easy days before the real world hit. She'd been with this dude, Christopher Davis, for about 6 months. He was 19, worked at his pop's mechanic shop, and seemed like a solid guy. Jennifer's parents were cool with him, which was a big deal. Robert Martinez was that dad, the type to be on the porch cleaning a shotgun when some dude rolled up for his daughter. July 25th, 2009, kicked off like any other hot Saturday in Marshall. The mercury hit 89 degrees before noon, that thick Michigan air that makes your shirt feel glued to your back. Jennifer was on the morning shift at Betty's Diner, hustling coffee and flapjacks for the old-timers who'd been posted up there for years. Her co-worker, Amanda Wilson, told the cops later that Jennifer was her usual self that day, laughing, cracking jokes, hyped, cause she and Christopher were hitting a movie that night. Around 2 p.m., Jennifer punched out, hopped in her beat-to-hell 98 Honda Civic, and bounced for home. She lived with her folks in a regular 2-story house on Maple Street, the kind with chip and paint and a chain-link fence. But it was their spot, and it was full of love. Karen Martinez was in the kitchen whipping up some potato salad for a family cookout they had planned for Sunday when Jennifer blew in. "Hey, Mama!" Jennifer yelled, dropping her purse on the counter and snagging a Coke from the fridge. They chopped it up about random stuff, how the shift went, what time the movie was, if Jennifer ever got around to doing her laundry, just normal mom and daughter chatter. Around 6:30 p.m., Jennifer headed upstairs to shower up. Karen could hear music blasting from her room, some pop joint on the radio, and her daughter singing off-key like she always did. At 7:15 p.m., Jennifer came back down, rocking denim shorts and a green tank top, her long dark hair still wet, smelling like strawberry shampoo. "Chris is scooping me at 7:30, Jennifer said, giving her mom a kiss on the cheek. "Movie's at round 10, so I'll be back by 10:30, 11 at the latest. Don't be too late," Karen shot back. That automum warning she'd probably said a million times. "And hit me up when you're on your way home." "I will, for real." Jennifer snatched her phone, one of them old-school flip phones. This was 2009, you gotta remember, and her little purse. She was posted by the living room window, looking out for Christopher's truck. Robert was kicked back in his recliner watching the game, and he looked up at his daughter, like, really saw her, and something made him get up and wrap her in a hug. He'd replay that second in his head every damn day for the rest of his life, some gut feeling, some dad instinct that made him hold on tight and tell her he loved her. "Love you too, Dad," Jennifer laughed, squirming away. "You're acting all weird." Headlights cut across the front of the house. Christopher's red Ford pickup rolled to the curb, and Jennifer was out the door, yelling goodbye over her shoulder. Karen watched from the window as her daughter hopped in the passenger seat, saw Christopher lean over for a kiss, saw them pull off down Maple Street heading for town. That was 7:32 p.m. Karen peeped the clock on the microwave. It was just a habit, keeping tabs on her kids' moves. She had no clue it was the last time she'd ever see her daughter breathing. Let me know what state you're repping in the comments, because this thing's about to get dark as hell and I want to know who's taking this ride with me. Christopher and Jennifer never saw that movie. The way Christopher told it to the cops, they got maybe 5 blocks from her crib when Jennifer's phone buzzed. She picked up, had a quick, quiet talk that he couldn't really hear over the stereo, then told him they had to make a detour. "One of my friends needs a hand with something," she supposedly said. "It'll only take a minute." Christopher said he asked who, but Jennifer was cagey, just said it was someone from work, and she'd fill him in later. He claimed she told him to drive to the east side of town, to a block that was way rougher, where some of the houses were boarded up and the streetlights were shot out by kids with BB guns. And right here is where the story gets sketchy as hell, a part that would mess with the cops' heads for years. Christopher said Jennifer told him to pull over by this old house on Creek Road, a spot that had been rotting for at least 5 years after the owner died and the family couldn't unload it. The place was a wreck, busted windows, a jungle for a yard, front porch, looking like it was about to give up. Christopher said he asked Jennifer what the hell they were doing there, and she told him to just wait in the truck, she'd be right back. He swore she got out, walked towards the house, dipped around the side, and that was it, the last time he ever saw her alive. Now, this is where Christopher's story starts sounding sus, and the police grilled him hard on this. He said he chilled in the truck for maybe 10, 15 minutes, he wasn't sure. The sun was dipping, the shadows were getting long, and this neighborhood was no joke even in broad daylight. He said he tried hitting Jennifer's phone, but it went straight to voice. He shot her a text. "Where are?" Crickets. After what he guessed was about 20 minutes, he said he started to bug out and went to find her. He walked around the house, yelling her name, but the place was dead silent. He said he jiggled the back door, and it was open, so he stepped inside. The inside of that house was straight up nightmare fuel water stains, mold crawling up the walls, holes punched in the drywall, trash everywhere from junkies and squatters who'd claimed the spot. Christopher said he yelled for Jennifer, his voice just bouncing off the empty rooms. He checked the kitchen, the living room, then started creeping up the stairs. That's when he saw her. Jennifer was laid out, in what used to be a bedroom at the end of the hall. She was on her back, eyes wide open, with red everywhere. Christopher said he screamed, ran to her, tried to feel for a pulse, but she was already cold. Her green tank top was soaked a deep, dark red. He could see the gashes on her chest, her stomach, her arms where she'd tried to fight him off. Christopher swore he lost it, ran back downstairs, and dialed 911 on his cell. The call came in at 8:47 p.m., exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes after Jennifer bounced from her parents' house. They played that 911 tape in court later, and you could hear the raw panic in his voice, how he was gasping for air, barely making sense. "My girlfriend, she's gone. There's blood all over, please. You gotta send someone." The dispatcher was trying to calm him down, get the address, ask if he saw anyone else, if Jennifer was really gone. Christopher was just a mess, crying, repeating over and over, "I should have gone in with her. I should have stopped her." The Marshall Police Department wasn't some big city operation, we're talking maybe 20 cops, for a town of about 7,000 heads. When the call about a body dropped, it was all hands on deck. Detective Robert Thompson, a 15-year vet, who'd probably seen 3 homicides in his whole career, was lead on the case. He rolled up to Creek Road at 8:56 p.m. with 4 cruisers, an ambulance, and within an hour, the Michigan State Police Crime Scene Unit pulled up from the regional office. The scene was pure chaos, Christopher sitting on the curb in cuffs, which is standard when you're the one who finds the body. Neighbors creeping out, even though the cops were trying to lock the block down, and evidence that was getting compromised by the second. Detective Thompson stepped into that house and went up those stairs, and what he saw burned itself into his brain forever. Jennifer Martinez was sprawled on the nasty floor of that bedroom, with 17 stab wounds across her torso and arms. The medical examiner would later say she'd been dead for about 30 to 45 minutes when Christopher found her, which put the time of death between 8 o'clock and 8:15 p.m. The wounds looked like a frenzy somebody went off on her, using serious force. The cuts on her hands and forearms proved she fought like hell, tried to save herself. There was no sign of sexual assault, which threw the cops at first. Her purse was still on her, phone inside, nothing jacked. This wasn't a robbery, this was personal. The crime scene crew worked all night, snapping pics of every inch of that room, bagging evidence, dusting for print. They found Jennifer's blood, of course, pools of it soaked into the beat-up floorboards. But they found something else, some unknown DNA under Jennifer's fingernails. She'd clawed her attacker, grabbed a piece of him as she was dying. They also lifted a partial bloody fingerprint from the doorframe of the bedroom and what looked like a dude's footprint in the dust size 11 work boot tread. The murder weapon was gone. The killer ghosted with it. While all that was going down, two uniforms got the worst job of the night rolling up to Maple Street to break the news to Jennifer's parents. Karen and Robert Martinez were watching TV, not even tripping yet because it wasn't even 10 p.m. when they saw the squad car pull up. Karen said later she just knew, deep in her gut, before they even knocked. No parent ever wants to see the cops at their door late at night. When Detective Thompson got there 20 minutes later to ask questions, Karen was a wreck. Robert was in a daze, and the two little brothers were crying, not really getting what Jennifer's dead meant, but knowing their world had just been shattered. Tell me in the comments what case you want me to crack open next, because this one is about to get even more twisted before we see the light. The hunt for Jennifer Martinez's killer kicked off full blast from the jump. Marshall was a small town, the kind of place where that level of violence just didn't happen. The last murder was 7 years before, some domestic beef where everybody knew who did it before the sirens even stopped. But this? An 18-year-old girl carved up in an abandoned house? The whole town was shook. Parents had their kids on lockdown. Women started clutching pepper spray. The local gun shop saw sales go through the roof. Marshall's safe little bubble had been popped in the most brutal way. Detective Thompson's first move was a no-brainer. Christopher Davis was suspect number one. It's always the boyfriend, ain't it? That's day one detective stuff. Christopher was the last one to see Jennifer alive. He found her, and his story had some serious gaps. Thompson had him come down to the station for a formal chat at 2 a.m. on July 26th, just a few hours after they'd bagged Jennifer's body. Christopher came on his own, said he'd do whatever it took to find the animal who did this. They put him in the box, cinder block walls, metal table, the whole two-way mirror setup from the movies, and Thompson got to work. Run it back for me, Christopher. From the moment you scooped Jennifer up, Christopher's story didn't really change, even after hours of questioning, which, believe it or not, looked good for him. Cats who lie can't keep their stories straight. Christopher stuck to it. Jennifer got a call, said a friend needed help, told him to drive to Creek Road, went in the house by herself, and never came out. Thompson pressed him hard on who called, why she'd walk into a derelict house, and why Christopher didn't go with her. Christopher swore he didn't know who called, that Jennifer just said a friend from work, and that he offered to go but she told him to stay in the truck. Did you end Jennifer Martinez's life? Thompson asked him, point blank, staring him down, looking for any twitch, any sign he was lying. No, hell no, man, I loved her. I was going to ask her to marry me next summer, after her first year of college. I already had the ring picked out. Christopher was breaking down, crying, a total mess. Thompson had seen plenty of crooks turn on the waterworks, but this dude's pain felt real. Still, you can't clear a guy just on a gut feeling. They asked Christopher for the clothes he was wearing, and he handed them over, no problem. They swabbed his DNA, took pictures of his hands and arms looking for any marks from a fight. They tossed his truck and found nothing but old fast food bags and Jennifer's favorite CD. They pulled his phone records. He'd called Jennifer twice, at 8:02 p.m. and 8:11 p.m., sent that text at 8:15, and hit 911 at 8:47. No other shady calls. His timesheet from the shop proved he was at work, till 6:30 p.m., then went straight home to get ready. A bunch of people backed up his whole timeline. The DNA from under Jennifer's fingernails came back in a week. It was from a man, but it wasn't Christopher's. That bloody print on the doorframe, not his either. The boot print in the dust was a size 11. Christopher wore a size 9. Unless he was rolling with a partner, which didn't fit the chaotic, personal nature of the attack, Christopher Davis didn't kill Jennifer Martinez. Detective Thompson was back to square one, hunting for a ghost. The next move, straight up, was Jennifer's phone. Who hit her up at 7:35 p.m. that night? The call, Christopher said, flipped their whole script. When the cops pulled Jennifer's phone records, they found some shady biz. The call came from a prepaid burner. One of them joints you can cop with cash at any gas station or Walmart. No ID, no questions asked. That phone got lit up the same day, July 25th, at 3:47 p.m. It made one single call to Jennifer at 7:35 p.m. and then went ghost. The call was 47 seconds long. After that, the phone was dead, probably snapped in half or tossed. This was planned out. For real, somebody set this whole thing up. But how'd the killer get Jennifer's digits? That was the easy part. She dropped them on her MySpace page. This was 2009. You gotta remember, social media was a different beast back then. Cats were just putting their whole life story online without a second thought. Jennifer's page had her number, her school, where she worked, the whole nine. The killer could have been any random person who peeped her profile. The police dug through her MySpace friends list, her DMs, her comments, looking for anybody sketchy. She had 342 friends on there, mostly heads she knew from school or around the way, but some were straight-up strangers who added her, cause she was a dime or they dug the same music. An internet stalker was a legit possibility. The investigators grilled everybody in Jennifer's circle, and I mean everybody. Her fam, her crew, her co-workers at the diner, cats from high school, her exes, people she barely knew. They chopped it up with Amanda Wilson and the other waitresses, asking if any dude had been creeping on Jennifer, any customers giving her too much attention, anybody who made her feel sketched out. Amanda remembered this one dude, some drifter who rolled into the diner a few times in early July, who'd asked Jennifer if she was single and got salty when she said she had a man. But he paid with cash, they had no name, and he never came back. A dead end, straight up. They hit every block on Creek Road and the whole neighborhood, knocking on every door, asking if anyone saw or heard anything wild on the night of July 25th. Most of the cribs were abandoned or had people who just stayed in their own lane and kept the blinds shut. One old lady, Margaret Sullivan, said she saw a dark sedan parked near the abandoned house around 7:30 or 7:45 p.m. But she couldn't clock the make or model, didn't see who was behind the wheel. Another witness, a teenager named Jason Mitchell, said he was skating in the area around 8 p.m. and thought he heard a woman scream, but he figured it was just somebody playing around and didn't check it out. By the time the cops talked to him 3 days later, his memory was all foggy on the times and details. Go ahead and murder that subscribe button if you want more stories like this, because we're just getting warmed up, and this case has more twists and turns than a snake in a phone booth. The autopsy report dropped, and it painted a savage picture. Jennifer had been stuck 17 times with a blade about 6 inches long, looking like a kitchen knife or a hunting knife. The attack was brutal, sloppy, just pure rage. The medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Chang, said the killer went at Jennifer's chest, stomach, and arms, missing any major organs at first, but causing her to bleed out like crazy. Jennifer was probably alive for several minutes after it started, wide awake and terrified as she bled out on that grimy floor. The thought of that Jennifer's last moments, the pain and fear she went through it wrecked her family. Karen Martinez couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She was just shut down. Robert turned into a ghost, just going through the motions, not really there. The funeral went down on July 30th, 2009, at St. Joseph Catholic Church in downtown Marshall. Over 600 heads showed up the whole high school, half the damn town, people who barely knew Jennifer but were shook by what happened. The church was packed so tight, they had to set up speakers outside so people could hear the service. Jennifer's casket was white with pink roses, closed cause of how they found her. Her senior picture was on a stand, next to it Jennifer smiling, her whole future in front of her, with no clue that in 2 months she'd be gone. Her brothers, Tyler and Brandon, stood by their parents, looking completely lost and broken. Christopher Davis sat in the back, crying his eyes out the whole time, with some of Jennifer's friends throwing him dirty looks even though the cops had already cleared him. Father Michael O'Brien gave the eulogy, talking about how kind Jennifer was, her dreams of being a teacher, how much she loved her family. He was trying to make sense of something that made no sense, trying to offer comfort when there wasn't any. Jennifer's life was snatched from her, from all of us, he said, but her memory, her spirit, the love she gave that can never be touched. We'll remember Jennifer not for how she left, but for how she lived. It was deep and heartbreaking, and did absolutely nothing to stop the hurt for anyone in that church. Meanwhile, the hunt was still on. Detective Thompson was pulling 16-hour days, chasing down every single lead, no matter how small. The FBI offered to jump in. They had their profilers, the head shrinkers who could build a picture of the killer from the crime scene. The profile they kicked back pointed to a white male, late 20s to early 40s, somebody with a personal beef against Jennifer or women in general. The messiness of the attacks screamed impulse or rage, but the burner phones screamed premeditation. It was all twisted up, confusing. Was this a planned hit that went sideways, or did some psycho just see an opportunity? The theory that got the most play early on was that Jennifer was lured to that house by someone she knew, someone she trusted enough to meet up with solo. The call from the burner, somebody faking like a friend in trouble, getting Jennifer to that isolated spot where they could get at her. But who? The cops looked at everyone in Jennifer's world and came up empty on motive. Nobody seemed shady enough. Nobody had a history of violence. They ran the DNA profile from under Jennifer's fingernails through CODIS, the Fed's big DNA database of convicted felons and cold cases. Nothing. No match. Whoever took out Jennifer Martinez wasn't in the system, had never been popped for a felony that made them give up their DNA. Weeks bled into months, and the trail went ice cold. The fear that first gripped the community started to fade, replaced by a new kind of dread the killer was still out there, could be anybody, and might never get caught. Parents still clutched their kids a little tighter, women still checked their back seats before getting in the whip, but life had to go on. Jennifer's story was on the local news, then the regional news, then it just vanished from the headlines as new tragedies took its place. The Martinez family felt left behind, like the whole world moved on while they were stuck forever. On July 25th, 2009, Detective Thompson wouldn't drop it, though. He kept grinding on the case even when his bosses told him to focus on other heat. He'd be up late at night, poring over the evidence files, looking for something they missed, some connection they didn't see. He went back to the crime scene a bunch of times, walking through that busted-up house, trying to get inside the killer's head. Why there? Did they pick that spot ahead of time? Or was it random? Did they know the house was there? Or did they just cruise around looking for a quiet place to do dirt? The house had zero link to Jennifer or anyone she knew that the cops could find. The owner was a retired teacher named Harold Jennings, who'd passed in 2004. His kids lived out of state and had been trying to sell the spot for years with no luck. None of them had any tie to Jennifer. One theory was the killer used that house before, maybe as a trap house or a squat, and knew it would be empty. Maybe they were even laying in wait when Jennifer pulled up, but that didn't square with the burner phone call. The evidence pointed to Jennifer walking into that house on her own, meeting someone she thought she knew, and then getting ambushed. But the house gave up no other clues. The footprint was snapped and measured, but couldn't be traced to anyone specific. The fingerprint was too jacked up to make a match unless they had a suspect to compare it to. By the end of 2009, 6 months after Jennifer was murdered, the case was officially on ice. Thompson was fresh out of Leeds. The FBI profile didn't point to anyone. The DNA just sat in a bag, waiting for a match that might never come. The Martinez family was living in hell, knowing their daughter's killer was walking free, maybe still in Marshall, maybe watching them suffer, maybe laughing about how they got away with it. Karen Martinez started a victims support group, turning her pain into power for other families ripped apart by violence. Robert buried himself in work, anything to keep from thinking about Jennifer's last moments. Tyler and Brandon were messed up in school, couldn't focus, started acting out, needed to see a shrink. Drop a comment if you think justice got served. But hold up, 'cause we ain't even close to the end of this 15-year nightmare. The years just dragged on with no breaks in Jennifer's case. 2010, 2011, 2012, Detective Thompson bounced in 2013, and the case file got passed to a younger detective, Sarah Mitchell. She went over everything Thompson did, read every witness statement, stared at every piece of evidence, but she kept hitting the same brick walls. The DNA was still their best shot, but with no match in CODIS, it was a ghost. Sarah hit up conferences on cold cases, learned about new forensic tech, and kept Jennifer's case burning in the back of her mind even as new bodies started piling up on her desk. The Martinez family held a vigil every year on July 25th, the day Jennifer was taken. The first few years, crowds showed up, standing outside street Joseph Church with candles, remembering Jennifer, screaming for justice. But as time passed, the crowds got smaller. By 2015, it was just family and a few ride or dies. The town had moved on. Jennifer was turning into a memory, a cautionary tale parents told their daughters, but not a real person anymore. Karen said that was the hardest part, watching her daughter fade away. While for her, the pain was as fresh as the day it happened. In 2016, Detective Mitchell got the green light to rerun some of the DNA evidence using tech that was way more advanced than what they had back in 2009. The science had made huge leaps. They could pull profiles from tiny samples, untangle mixed DNA, and make IDs that were impossible before. They retested the DNA from under Jennifer's fingernails and got a cleaner profile, but it still didn't ping anyone in CODIS. They also hit the bloody fingerprint again, with new chemicals that could pull prints the old way missed, but the print was still too messed up, too faded. Christopher Davis, Jennifer's boyfriend, bounced from Marshall in 2011. The shade that followed him even after the cops cleared him was too much. People whispered behind his back, gave him dirty looks, blamed him for not keeping Jennifer safe. He dipped to Ohio, got a gig as a mechanic, tried to start over, but the guilt ate him alive. He told a reporter years later he thought about Jennifer every single day, wondering if things would have gone different if he'd just gone in that house with her, if he'd been more suspicious of that phone call. He never got married, never had another serious girl. Jennifer was his one, and losing her like that just broke him for good. They tore down the abandoned house on Creek Road in 2014. The property was a wreck for so long, the city finally called it a hazard and brought in the bulldozers. Karen Martinez was there the day they leveled it, watching the walls that saw her daughter's final moments turn to dust. She said later she hoped it would bring her some peace, but it didn't. If anything, it felt like they were erasing Jennifer, getting rid of the last place she was. Now it's just an empty lot, with weeds growing over the spot where Jennifer bled out. 2017, 2018, 2019, still nothing. Detective Mitchell kept checking CODIS, hoping the killer got popped for something else, got his DNA put in the system, but it was always crickets. She started going to workshops on genealogical DNA, this new school technique that was starting to crack cold cases. You probably heard about it. It's how they bagged the Golden State Killer in 2018 by uploading crime scene DNA to public family tree sites like GED Match and finding the killer's relatives. It was a game changer, shady to some, but damn, it was working. Cases that were cold for 30, 40 years were suddenly getting solved. In early 2020, Mitchell went to the Marshall PD and the prosecutor's office with a pitch. Let's use genetic genealogy on Jennifer's case. The DNA they had was solid, and with the new tech, they might be able to ID the killer through his family. But there was a catch: the cost. These investigations ain't cheap. You need special companies and genealogists who charge thousands of dollars. Marshall was a small town with a tight budget, and the department was already stretched thin. The prosecutor, James Davidson, wasn't trying to drop that kind of cash on a cold case when they had live ones that needed the money. But Karen Martinez wasn't going to let a price tag stop justice for her daughter. She started a GoFundMe in March 2020, right when COVID was locking the whole world down. Her goal was to raise $15,000 to pay for the genetic genealogy work on Jennifer's case. She blasted it on Facebook, hit up the local news, and begged people to help. The response was insane. In 2 weeks, she'd raised $23,000. People from all over the country threw down cash, a lot of them leaving messages about their own people they'd lost, their own fights for justice. In May 2020, with the money in the bank, Detective Mitchell called up Parabon Nanolabs, one of the top dogs in the forensic genealogy game. The whole process was complicated as hell. Parabon took the DNA profile from under Jennifer's nails and uploaded it to GED Match and Family Tree DNA, two public sites where people had willingly dropped their own DNA results from places like 23andMe and Ancestry. The system hunted for genetic matches, not the killer himself, but his relatives, people who shared his DNA. The closer the family, the more DNA they'd share. Check it. A parent or kid would share about 50%, a brother or sister about 50%, a first cousin about 12.5%, second cousins about 3%, and it keeps going down from there. Go ahead and hit that like button if this story's got you gripped, because we're about to get to the one break that flipped this whole thing on its head. The first matches that popped up were distant, like fourth and fifth cousins, who shared just a tiny piece of DNA with the mystery killer. But that was all they needed. These genetic genealogists are like detectives, but they work with family trees instead of fingerprints. They started building out family trees for every one of those distant cousins, going backwards in time, looking for the great-great-grandparents they all had in common. It was a straight-up grind, digging through birth records, death certificates, marriage licenses, old census data, obituaries, anything that could help them map out the bloodlines. The brainiac they put on Jennifer's case was this chick, Rebecca Thompson, no relation to the first cop, a 50-year-old ex-librarian who got deep in the DNA game after using it to find her own peoples. Rebecca was grinding on this case for months, mapping out family trees with hundreds of heads, searching for a link. By October 2020, she hit pay dirt, found the OG couple Thomas and Mary Sullivan, who were living in Michigan back in the 1880s, and dropped 11 kids. All the DNA hits on the killer traced back to these two, which meant the perp was family too. Straight up. From there, Rebecca had to trace it all down the line, building this monster family tree stretching back 140 years with thousands of names. She was hunting for dudes, since the DNA from Jennifer's nails was male, dudes who were grown in 2009 and rolling around Marshall, Michigan. This gig was insane. Rebecca was basically piecing together whole family sagas, hitting up distant cousins, telling them she was on a case, but keeping it low-key, you feel me? Come February 2021, Rebecca had the list down tight to about 27 possible dudes. Detective Mitchell started digging on every single one, running their plates, checking their rap sheets, trying to cross names off the list. Some cats were easy to bounce. They dipped from Michigan ages ago, had a solid story for July 25th, 2009, or were already in the ground before Jennifer got hit. Others, though, needed a closer look. But one name kept popping up in Rebecca's deep dive, though Michael Clark. Dude was 45 back in 2009, living in Bellevue, a speck on the map, about 12 miles from Marshall. He was a grease monkey, spun wrenches at some indie shop. He was a quiet type, stayed in his lane, a clean sheet, except for a lead-foot ticket back in 2003. He was blood, from Thomas and Mary Sullivan's line through their son Patrick, making him a cousin to a bunch of the DNA hits. On paper, this dude looked squeaky clean, just some regular Joe, worked hard, paid his bills, showed his face at church sometimes. But when Detective Mitchell started really digging, shit got weird. Turns out, Michael Clark had a spot in Marshall for a minute in 2008 to 2009, renting a crib on Oak Street, like 6 blocks from Jennifer's family's place. He bounced back to Bellevue in October 2009, 3 months after Jennifer was taken out. Mitchell couldn't link him. Know how they didn't run in the same circles? No mutuals. Not even friends on the book. But location-wise, they were practically neighbors when it all went down. Too close for comfort. Then Mitchell finds this bombshell. Michael hit up Oaklawn Hospital in Marshall on July 26th, 2009, the day after Jennifer was murdered, for a nasty gash on his left hand that needed 12 stitches. The chart says he sliced himself working on a car. Yeah, that could be legit mechanics. Get cut up all the time, but the timing was sketchy as hell. If Jennifer clawed him up while fighting for her life, he'd need to get patched up, right? By late 2021, Mitchell's got it down to 5 dudes, with Michael Clark staring her in the face at number 1. But here's the kicker. Even with the family tree science pointing right at him, they needed his DNA, straight from the source, to lock it in. You can't just cuff a guy, cause his cousin's DNA is in the system. They needed Michael Clark's actual DNA to match against the sample from under Jennifer's fingernails. And they had to get it by the book, or it was all for nothing in court. The play was a trash pull. The cops legally jacked Michael's garbage right off the curb on trash day, which is abandoned property, so no warrant needed. Game on. One freezing morning, in January 2022, the D's grab the bags from his can and start digging through the filth, looking for anything with his DNA on it. Smokes, cups, napkins, anything his lips touched. They scored a Budweiser can with spit on the rim. Bingo. That's all they needed. That beer can DNA got rushed to the state crime lab. The wait was pure torture. It took 6 long weeks to get the word. Detective Mitchell was blowing up the lab's phone every few days, trying to push it, but you can't rush this stuff. The Martinez family was still in the dark. Mitchell wasn't about to give him false hope till she had it locked down. She'd seen too many hot leads turn to smoke over the years. Then, March 3rd, 2022, Mitchell gets the call she's been waiting 13 years for. The DNA off that can was a dead match to the DNA under Jennifer Martinez's fingernails. Not a maybe, not a kinda, but a 100% stone-cold match. The odds it was anyone else? Like 1 in a gazillion trillion. They got his ass. Drop a 2 in the comments if you called that twist, cause I bet most of y'all were sleeping on this one. The takedown was planned out to a T. Michael Clark was still in Bellevue, still turning wrenches. He was clueless the cops were onto him. No damn clue his whole world was about to go up in flames. Morning of April 15th, 2022, 12 years, 8 months, and 21 days after Jennifer was gone, state troopers, Marshall PD, and the sheriff's crew all rolled up on Michael's crib at 6 a.m. Michael's getting ready for his shift when someone starts banging on his door like they're gonna break it down. Police. Search warrant. He cracks the door in jeans and a t-shirt, no shoes, coffee in his hand, and next thing you know, he's face down on the floor, getting cuffed up while they read him his rights and toss his house. He's all, "Yo, what's this about? What I do?" Trying to play dumb, but cats who saw it said his eyes told a different story, not shock, just, "It's over." Like he knew, deep down, this day was always coming. Detective Mitchell was right there, front and center for the bust, and she stared Clark dead in the eye as they shoved him in the squad car. She told him, "This is for Jennifer Martinez. We got you." Clark's face went ghost white, but he kept his mouth shut, just looked away. Down at the station, they tossed him in the box and let him stew for an hour, that classic move to let the pressure cook. Then Mitchell and another D, James Rodriguez, rolled in to have a little chat. "Michael, you know why you're here," Mitchell said, dropping the bomb while she lays out pics of Jennifer on the table in front of him. Jennifer smiling in her senior pic, Jennifer at Christmas with her bros, and then the shot from the scene. Michael glanced at him, then looked away, his jaw tight as a drum. "I don't know nothing about that," he mumbled, his voice all dead. "Your DNA tells a different story. We found you under her fingernails, Michael. She clawed you up when you took her out. You ran to the hospital the next day because she fought back and messed you up. We got you dead to rights." Mitchell laid it all out for him. The DNA family tree, the trash pull, the match, the hospital receipts. She told him they knew he hit Jennifer up on a burner, lured her to that house, and did the damn thing. She pressed him. "Why? What did Jennifer ever do to you? Why her?" Michael just kept repeating it. "I want a lawyer." He ain't deny it, ain't say they got the wrong dude, ain't offer up no alibi. Just "I want a lawyer," over and over. That's his right, so the talk was over. Done. They booked him for first-degree premeditated murder and held him with no bail. The news of Clark's arrest hit Marshall like a damn shockwave. People were bugging. Michael Clark? No way. The quiet grease monkey from Bellevue, who just fixed cars and stayed low. His work crew said he was straight, maybe a little antisocial, but not the violent type. His neighbors said he was their boy for years, never caused no trouble. His ex-wife, though, she said he was a control freak with a hot temper, but never thought he'd do something like this. The D's started piecing together Michael Clark's whole story. He came up in Battle Creek, about 20 miles from Marshall. His childhood looked normal on the surface middle-class family. Finished high school in 1984, went to trade school to be a mechanic. He wifed up his high school sweetheart, Lisa, in 1987. They had 2 kids, but the whole thing crumbled in the early 2000s. Lisa bounced in 2005, saying they just didn't vibe. But later she told the cops that Michael got super paranoid and controlling accusing her of creeping, checking her calls, cutting her off from her peoples. After the split, Michael was just drifting. Bounced around mid-Michigan, working at different shops, never putting down roots. He had no real crew, no main chick. His kids, grown by 2009, barely messed with him. They said he was cold, emotionally checked out, and sometimes just plain mean. When the cops chopped it up with his son, David, he was like, honestly, I ain't shocked. Dad always had this rage inside, like some dark secret he was sitting on. The million-dollar question was, why Jennifer? The cops found nothing to prove Michael even knew her, had stalked her, or had any contact before. The best they could figure was Michael peeped Jennifer around town, maybe at Betty's diner where she worked, maybe just around, and got straight up obsessed. They grabbed his computer, but the dude had wiped it clean back in 2010, probably torching any proof he was cyber-stalking her. What they did find was proof Michael was on MySpace back in 2009, though his account was long gone. He probably saw Jennifer's page, jacked her number from it, and plotted the whole damn thing. They traced the burner phone by to a Walmart in Battle Creek, July 25th, 2009, paid for with cash money at 3:47 p.m. by some dude. The security tapes from that day were history, but the timeline fit perfectly. Michael must have cocked the phone, fired it up, hit Jennifer's line a few hours later, then snapped it in half after he did his dirt. The call to Jennifer was only 47 seconds, just enough time for Michael to pose as someone she knew, spin some story about an emergency, and get her to meet him at that house. Yo, send this to your true crime homie, cause this story's about to wrap, and the ending is gonna blow your mind. No cap. The court grind moves slow. You know how it is. Michael Clark got hauled into court on April 18th, 2022, and pleaded not guilty. His public defender, Thomas Bradley, tried to argue the DNA family tree stuff was bogus, that the trash pull was a violation of his rights, that the DNA match could have been from some innocent run-in. But real talk, Bradley was fighting a losing battle. The science was on lock. The law backed the cops' play. And that DNA evidence? You can't argue with that. Karen and Robert Martinez were at every single hearing, no exceptions, posted up in the front row, just burning a hole through Michael Clark. This was the dude who took their daughter from them, who jacked her future and put them through 13 years of hell on earth. Karen said later she thought she'd feel pure rage looking at him, but mostly she just felt empty. He was so regular, so basic. How could some average Joe do something so evil? The DA, James Davidson, slid Michael a plea deal in August 2022, plead guilty to second degree, and he'd get 25 to 40 years instead of life with no way out. Michael's lawyer told him to take the deal, but Michael said nah. He kept saying he was innocent, that the DNA was all messed up. His lawyer was throwing motions left and right, trying to get the evidence tossed, but Judge Patricia Morrison wasn't having it. She shut it all down. The trial was supposed to pop off in March 2023, but it kept getting pushed back. COVID messing up the courts, the defense pulling moves, all that drama. It finally kicked off on September 18th, 2023, 14 years, and 2 months after Jennifer was murdered. The courthouse in Marshall was jam-packed every single day. The Martinez family was there. Christopher Davis flew in from Ohio. Amanda and all of Jennifer's peoples showed up to see justice finally go down. The prosecution came out swinging, laying out a brutal case. They dropped the DNA evidence, brought in the big brains to break down the family tree science and how it fingered Michael Clark. They showed the jury the pics of what he did to Jennifer, describing how savage the attack was. They dropped evidence that Michael was living right there in Marshall when it happened, and that he got his hand stitched up the very next day. They painted the picture. Michael got obsessed with Jennifer, stalked her online, planned her murder, and carried it out like a stone-cold killer. The defense tried to throw shade, play in the reasonable doubt card. Bradley argued that this genetic genealogy stuff was too new school, too untested, that it could have fingered the wrong dude. He pointed out there was no hard evidence, locking Michael to the scene besides the DNA under Jennifer's nails. No witnesses, no weapon, no real reason. He tried to sell that Jennifer could have scratched Michael during some harmless run-in the cops never found, and some other guy took her out. It was a weak play, and the jury wasn't having it. For 3 straight weeks, people were on the stand, spilling their guts. Jennifer's family had to get up there and talk about who she was, what she meant to them, how her death just tore their world apart. Karen was a wreck, just broke down on the stand, describing how she still puts out a plate for Jennifer at Thanksgiving every year, how she can't even step inside Jennifer's old room because they left it untouched, like a shrine from the day she died. Robert, her pops, he talked about the weight he carries for not protecting his daughter, for letting her walk out that door. Christopher had to relive finding her body, talking about the nightmares that still haunt him, about how loving Jennifer and losing her jacked up his whole damn life. But the real heavy hitters, the forensic crew who ran that genetic genealogy, Rebecca Thompson, the genealogist, broke it all down, step by step. How she built the family trees, how she sifted through thousands of potential suspects to pin down Michael Clark. The DNA analyst from the state lab testified that the match between Michael's DNA and the crime scene sample was 100% solid, that there was zero chance of a mistake. Michael Clark was there. He did that to Jennifer, and he left a piece of himself behind when she fought like hell to live. Michael? He stayed quiet, didn't say a word. His lawyer told him to keep his mouth shut, knowing the prosecutor would eat him alive on the stand. So he just sat there, stone-faced, ice in his veins, while everyone around him was forced to live through Jennifer's last moments, again and again. The jury was out for 7 long hours. On October 12th, 2023, they came back with the word guilty of first-degree murder. The whole room just exploded. Karen Martinez was crying her eyes out. Robert just dropped his head in his hands. Jennifer's brothers just held on to each other. Even some of the jurors were tearing up. And Michael Clark? Nothing, not a flicker. Just stood there, while the judge thanked the jury and set the date to drop the sentence. Sentencing went down November 30th, 2023. In Michigan, first-degree murder gets you a mandatory life sentence in prison, no getting out, ever. Before the judge dropped the hammer, the Martinez family got to face him to speak their piece. Karen stepped up first, her voice shaky but hard as nails. Michael Clark, you snatched my daughter from me. You stole her future, every dream she ever had, her shot at being a teacher, at getting married, at having her own kids. You took my chance to watch her grow up, to be a grandma to her babies, to get old watching her live her life. You didn't just end Jennifer's life that night. You took a piece of me, a piece of my husband, a piece of her brothers. We've been doing a life sentence for 14 years, and now you get yours. I hope you rot in that cell. I hope you see her face every single day for the rest of your miserable life. Robert was next, his voice just dripping with rage and pain. I was supposed to protect my little girl. That was my job as her father, and I failed. But you ain't nothing but a coward. You tricked an 18-year-old kid into going to some busted-up house, and you snuffed her out. You're pathetic. You're straight-up evil, and I'm glad you're gonna be behind bars. Tyler and Brandon, her brothers, they spoke too, talking about losing their sis, about growing up with this massive hole in their crew that could never be filled. By the end, the whole damn courtroom was in tears, except for Michael. Just staring straight ahead, blank. Judge Morrison gave Michael a chance to talk before laying down the sentence. And for the first time, Michael actually stood up and said something. And what came out of his mouth? It left everyone shook. I'm sorry, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. I killed Jennifer Martinez. I don't even know why. I saw her around town, and I got twisted up, obsessed, I guess. I thought about her non-stop. I made that call. I got her to that house, and when she got there, something inside me just broke. I didn't go there to do that. It happened. And I've lived with that guilt every day since. I know saying sorry is worthless to her family. I know what I am, a monster, and I deserve every bit of this. That was the first time he ever copped to what he did. The DA's office figured he finally fessed up, because he knew the game was over. No more moves to make, no chance of ever seeing daylight again. He was gonna die in a cage. So why not just drop the truth? Judge Morrison dropped the hammer. Life in prison, no parole, period. They took him straight into custody and shipped him off to a max security joint up in northern Michigan, where he's going to live out the rest of his days. He's 60 years old now, and unless he checks out early, he's looking at decades behind the wall. Drop a comment below if you know this story, because what went down in Marshall, Michigan back in 2009, that's something we can't ever let fade away. Wrapping up this case brought some kind of peace to her family, but it damn sure didn't erase the pain. Karen Martinez said in an interview after that, she thought she'd feel relieved when the killer was caught and convicted, but mostly, she just felt drained. 14 years grinding for justice, of keeping Jennifer's name alive, of refusing to let this case go cold. It took everything she had. Robert felt the same, saying they were in survival mode for so long, just pushing through, that they forgot how to just live. But at least now, they knew. And that was something. For 14 years, it was all questions. Who did this, and why? They ran through every crazy scenario, a serial killer, a random stranger, someone they knew hiding right in front of them. Knowing it was Michael Clark, hearing him admit it, knowing he's never getting out, that hit different. It couldn't bring Jennifer back, but it put respect on her name. It meant her life mattered, that the streets always get justice, even if it takes years. The Martinez family set up a scholarship fund in Jennifer's name at Western Michigan University, the school she was headed to. Every year, they drop $5,000 on a student trying to be an elementary school teacher, someone with the same dream Jennifer had. It's their way of keeping her spirit alive, of flipping this tragedy into something good. So far, they've helped 12 students get their degree, 12 new teachers out there carrying Jennifer's torch forward. This case also flipped the script on how cops handle cold cases in Michigan and all over. The win with that genetic genealogy tech proved that even cases collecting dust for decades could get cracked. Cops all over the country started sending in old cold case DNA to these genealogy outfits, and the results? They've been insane. Hundreds of cases that were dead in the water are now solved, putting monsters who thought they got away with it behind bars where they belong. Detective Sarah Mitchell, who was on this case for 10 years, said busting Michael Clark was the most satisfying moment of her entire career. Now she's all in on this genetic genealogy game, schooling other detectives on how to use the tech, helping other families get the answers the Martinez family finally got. She keeps a pic of Jennifer on her desk, Jennifer smiling, full of life, to remind her why she's in this fight. Christopher Davis, her boyfriend back then, said seeing Michael get convicted finally let him breathe and move on with his life. For 14 years, he was carrying all that weight, that guilt, wondering what he could have done different to save Jennifer. Knowing who did it and why even a messed up, why let him drop some of that heavy load? He's met somebody new, he's engaged, and he's building a future he never thought was in the cards for him. He says he still thinks about Jennifer every day, always will. But now he's learning to remember the good times, not just that one terrible night. That busted up house on Creek Road where it all went down. They tore that thing down years ago, but her family put up a memorial right there, a little garden, a bench, and a plaque that says, "In memory of Jennifer Martinez, 1991 to 2009. Gone but never forgotten." People still drop off flowers, especially on July 25th, the anniversary of that night. It's become a spot that reminds you that, yeah, there's evil out there, but there's also love, there's also grit, and there's also justice. Aight, listen up, 'cause here's the real talk, and I'ma keep it 100 with you. This ain't to scare you, it's to make you smart. First off, trust your gut, always. If something feels sketchy, if someone gives you bad vibes, if a situation seems off, you gotta listen to that voice inside. Jennifer got a call that night and rolled out to meet somebody, and we'll never know the exact words that got her to go, but she trusted the situation enough to go. You gotta be careful who you trust, even people who act like they know you. Second, watch your digital footprint. For real, Jennifer had her phone number up on MySpace, and that's how this monster got to her. Now, you got Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat. It's way too easy to put all your business out there. Think hard about what you're posting and who's seeing it. Lock down your accounts. Don't be dropping your location live. And for damn sure, don't post your number or where you live for the world to see. Third, always let your people know where you're at. No exceptions. Jennifer told her folks she was going to the movies, but when the plan switched up, she didn't hit them back. If she'd just shot her mom a text that she was making a stop on Creek Road, if Christopher had told somebody where they were headed, man, maybe the whole story changes. Your crew ain't trying to be in your business, they're trying to make sure you're safe. Fourth, if you're linking up with somebody you don't really know, do it out in the open. Never, ever go to some dead-end spot. No creepy old buildings, no place where you're all alone. Meet up at a coffee spot, the mall, whatever, someplace with eyes everywhere, and cameras rolling. That ain't being paranoid. That's being street smart. And last thing, never, ever give up the fight. The Martinez family could have just let it go, let the case get cold and accepted it was never going to be solved, but they refused. Karen hustled, raised the cash for that DNA testing, she stayed on the cops' necks, and refused to let Jennifer just be another name on a file. That fire is what brought justice home. So if you're fighting for something, for someone, you don't ever back down. The truth always finds a way to the light. Jennifer Martinez should be 33 years old right now. She should be in a classroom, teaching little kids, changing lives. She should have married Christopher, or somebody else, had her own babies, and watched them grow up. She should have been there for her brother's weddings, been there when her parents got old and needed her. She should have lived a long, full, beautiful life. Michael Clark stole all of that from her in a few minutes of pure, senseless violence. But Jennifer's story, it don't end in that busted-up house. It lives on in that scholarship that's got her name on it, in the students getting a chance to get educated. Cause of her, in all the cold cases getting solved. Cause of the tech that found her killer. And in every parent who holds their kid a little tighter after hearing her story. Her life mattered. Her death mattered. And justice, no matter how long it takes, matters. The Martinez family says they're still trying to find their new normal, even now. It's been almost 2 years since he got put away, and they're learning how to live with it all, knowing Jennifer's gone. But her killer is finally paying his debt. They still hit the graveyard every week, still talk to her, still miss her like crazy every single day. But there's a little bit of light now that wasn't there before, that heavy weight of not knowing, of wondering, of fighting for answers. It's finally been lifted. Karen Martinez's last words to Michael at the sentencing said it all perfectly. You tried to break us, Michael. You tried to snatch our daughter and leave us with nothing but pain. But we're still standing. We're still fighting. We're still loving Jennifer and keeping her name alive. You lost. We won. And that's the real end to Jennifer's story, with love beaten evil, with family beaten hate, and with justice beaten murder. So that's the real deal on Jennifer Martinez, a shorty from Marshall, Michigan, whose life got snatched, but her name ain't never gonna fade. Her whole situation proves, no matter how iced out a case gets, no matter how many years slide by, the truth always finds a way to bust out. The science game changes, the tech gets wilder, and you got cats out there who won't stop digging for what's real. The darkness don't always win, you feel me? Sometimes, after mad years in the shadows, a little light cracks through. Yo, if you're still locked in, big ups for hearing Jennifer's story. Thanks for keeping her name alive, for paying respect by knowing the real story of what they did to her. This true crime stuff ain't just about the blood and the whodunit. It's about real folks getting wrecked, families getting torn apart, lives flipped upside down for good. It's about getting what's owed, finding some peace, and making damn sure the ones we lost ain't just another forgotten name. And listen up, keep your head on a swivel, stay strapped with your senses, trust your gut, and watch each other's backs. We all on this same rock, fam, and the more we ride for each other, the harder we make it for snakes like Michael Clark to creep on good people. Justice for Jennifer Martinez. For real, finally. Aight. Part 2 kicks off right now. Don't blink. When they finally slammed the door on Michael Clark, that joint sent tremors way past Marshall, Michigan. The whole case blew up, became the blueprint for how this new school science could rewind the clock and drag justice out the darkness. Even when the old school cop work hit a dead end, straight up. Cops all over the United States started eyeballing their cold case files different, wondering how many other families were still out there hanging, waiting for answers that this DNA tech could drop. That Parabon Nanolabs crew that cracked Jennifer's case. Man, their phones started blowing up non-stop. Rebecca Thompson, the brainiac who spent months mapping out family trees to pinpoint Michael Clark, she became a straight-up legend in the forensics game. They had her dropping knowledge at conferences, schooling other gene wizards, and jumping on dozens of other ice-cold cases. She always kept Jennifer's senior pick on her desk while she was grinding, a reminder that behind every DNA hit and family chart was a real person whose life got jacked. Detective Sarah Mitchell dropped a whole playbook on Jennifer's investigation, and it became mandatory reading for new recruits at the Michigan State Police Academy. She broke down every single move from the jump at the crime scene in 2009 to the DNA game changer in 2023, showing what hit, what missed, and what future detectives needed to peep. The biggest takeaway, Mitchell stressed, was you gotta stay hungry. We could have bounced 100 times, she wrote. The trail went cold. The leads turned to dust. Years went by with nothing, but we kept Jennifer's evidence on lock, kept the file open, and when that new tech dropped, we were ready to roll. The whole legal angle of using family tree DNA to lock up bad guys was still a hot debate in courtrooms everywhere. Defense lawyers were screaming that digging through public DNA sites was a violation, straight up invading people's privacy, saying folks who dropped their DNA to find their long-lost cousin never signed up to help the cops bag a killer. Civil rights crews were worried about a DNA police state and how it could all go left. But the DAs and the victims' families clapped back, saying these sites were public domain, that users clicked agree on the fine print that let the law in, and that catching monsters who do this stuff was worth any hit to privacy. Michael Clark's new lawyer, some shark named Patricia Hernandez, who was known for flipping convictions, she filed an appeal in March of 2024, trying to argue that the family tree DNA evidence shouldn't have even been allowed in court. She was claiming the science was too fresh, not tested enough, and that the jury was gassed up to think it was 100% foolproof when it wasn't. The appeal also went after the trash can snatch that got Michael's DNA, saying it violated his Fourth Amendment rights against illegal searches. The Michigan Court of Appeals heard the whole showdown in August 2024. Karen and Robert Martinez were in the house, shook, thinking that after all they'd been through, this snake might actually beat the rap. They had to sit there while suits argued about DNA stats and the Constitution, turning Jennifer's murder into some cold, abstract legal game. It was brutal, straight up disrespectful, to hear their baby girl's death get chopped up in such a cold-blooded way. The appeals court dropped its decision in November 2024, and Michael Clark's conviction stood. Every single charge. The three-judge crew ruled the family tree science was legit, that the jury got the right info, and that the trash snatch was legal based on old-school rules. The dude left his DNA under her fingernails when he took her life, the official paper said, using legal moves to ID. Him doesn't jack his constitutional rights. Justice that's late ain't justice that's lost. And this family deserved to know who stole their daughter. Michael's lawyer said she was taking it to the Michigan Supreme Court, but the legal heads said the odds of the top court even hearing it were slim to none. Even if they did, and even if they somehow sided with him, the DA could just run it back without the DNA evidence. His confession in court would still be on the table, and that alone could put him away for good. Bottom line, Michael Clark was going to die in a cage, no matter what legal tricks his lawyers tried to pull. Smash that like button if you're still riding with me, because we're about to get into the real shockwaves this case sent through the justice system and the forensics game across the country. While Michael was rotting in a cell, ducking interviews, and staying ghost to the other inmates, the forensics world was flipping the whole cold case game on its head. The win in Jennifer's case proved this family tree DNA stuff wasn't just a fluke. It was a legit, repeatable way to put a name to a ghost. By 2024, Parabon Nanolabs and crews like them had helped crack over 500 cold cases using this same move. Killings from the 1970s and 1980s were finally getting closed out. Serial predators, who thought they were gods, were getting ID and cuffed. One of the realest moves to come out of this was the Justice for Victims Initiative, a non-profit started in 2024 by Karen Martinez and 3 other moms who'd lost their kids to unsolved hits. The crew raised cash to pay for the DNA deep dives for families who were broke, because not every police department had the funds or the heart to chase these expensive leads. In its first year alone, the Justice for Victims Initiative stacked over $2 million and bankrolled the DNA work on 43 cold cases, which led to 7 dudes getting snatched up. Karen became the face of the whole movement, bouncing all over the country, chopping it up with victims' families, schooling them on how to fight for their people, showing them that even cases that were decades deep could get cracked. She told her story everywhere, on pods, at conferences, in the papers, on TV. Some haters whispered, wondering if it was healthy, if she was just using Jennifer's death to get famous. Karen's clapback was always the same. If telling Jennifer's story helps one other family get justice, if it cracks one more case, then it's all worth it. My daughter's death wasn't for nothing. It changed the whole game. That's gotta mean something. Robert Martinez, though, he handled the fallout in his own way. He bounced from his gig at the plant in 2023, couldn't even focus on work after the trial. He just spent his days messing with the house, fixing stuff that wasn't even broken, just to keep his mind from going there. But at night, the ghosts came back. He'd dream of Jennifer as a little kid, on her bike, cracking up at his jokes, safe and sound. Then he'd wake up, and reality would hit him like a ton of bricks. She was gone, and the pain would just crush him all over again. Tyler and Brandon, Jennifer's little brothers, they grew up into men molded by all this pain. Tyler's 28 now, a teacher working with little kids, just like Jennifer wanted to do. He said he picked that path to honor his sister, to live out the dream she never got the chance to chase. Every year on Jennifer's birthday, he reads her old college essay to his class, the one where she wrote about wanting to lift kids up and make them feel safe and seen. His students have no idea why Mr. Martinez gets choked up sometimes when he talks about being good to people, but he knows why. Brandon, 26, he went a different route. He put on a badge. He's a patrol cop with the Battle Creek PD now, working the same damn streets where Michael Clark came up. Brandon said he became a cop because of what went down with Jennifer, because he wanted to protect people the way nobody protected his sister. He keeps a pic of Jennifer in his squad car, and every time he rolls up on a violent call, every time he talks to a victim or bags evidence, he's thinking of her. Every caller he makes, it's for Jennifer. The whole town of Marshall got flipped on its head after Jennifer's murder, and when they finally caged her killer. For years, people whispered on the low about the case, cooking up their own theories, side-eyeing their own neighbors. Some were dead set it was Christopher, Jennifer's boyfriend. Others figured it was some drifter just rolling through. A few thought it might be a local, but nobody ever pictured it being Michael Clark, the quiet mechanic from Bellevue, who worked on their rides and stayed in his own lane. When the news dropped that they'd cuffed Michael, it straight up shattered the town's whole vibe of thinking they knew their people. Michael had been right there with them, working with them, even praying in the same church as some of them. He was at the grocery store, the gas station, the same damn diner where Jennifer worked. He probably saw her missing posters, maybe even chopped it up with people about the case, acting all sad for her family, knowing the whole time he was the one who did it. The backstab was deep. If Michael Clark could be a monster, if some regular dude could do something that foul, then who the hell could you trust? Betty's Diner, the spot where Jennifer clocked her last shift, it turned into a low-key memorial. Her work crew kept a pic of her behind the counter, and the regulars would slide through and leave flowers or notes. Amanda Wilson, who worked with Jennifer and got grilled by the cops back in 2009, said she still thinks about her homegirl every single day. "We were supposed to get old together, you know," Amanda said in a 2024 interview. "We were supposed to be at each other's weddings, have our kids be friends, trip about getting grey hairs. Instead, I'm 33, and I've been in therapy more times than I can count, just trying to deal with the head trip of losing my best friend. That busted down house where Jennifer died? It's long gone. They tore it down in 2014, but that empty lot is still heavy. The memorial garden the Martinez family put in became a spot where the whole town would link up, especially on July 25th every year. People would drop off flowers, teddy bears, and handwritten notes for Jennifer. Even teenagers who weren't even born when it happened would come through to pay respects to a girl they never knew, a symbol of innocence snatched, and justice finally served. Drop your state in the comments right now, because this story hits different everywhere. This kind of violence touches every hood, every family. The way these cold cases mess with a family's head is something most people can't even wrap their minds around unless they've been through it. When someone you love gets taken and the case just sits there, you're stuck in this messed up limbo that ain't like regular grief. You can't get no closure because there's too many questions hanging in the air. You can't move on because the case is still technically open. You can't even really grieve because a piece of you is still in fight mode, still hoping for justice, still waiting for that call. This shrink, Dr. Rachel Green, who's a pro at helping families of homicide victims, she worked with the Martinez family after Jennifer was gone and for years after. In some paper she dropped in 2025, Dr. Green called it suspended grief, basically being unable to finish mourning when a case is still cold. The Martinez family was stuck in that suspended grief for 14 years, she wrote. They were caught between hoping and hurting, couldn't even really accept Jennifer was gone because they didn't know why. When they finally cuffed and convicted Michael Clark, it was like somebody hit play again. They could finally grieve for real, finally start to heal. But Healing from that kind of hit ain't a straight line. Karen Martinez got hit with a PTSD and depression diagnosis in 2011, 2 years after Jennifer was killed. She was dealing with panic attacks, couldn't sleep, and what she called anticipatory dread, just this constant feeling that something else bad was about to jump off. Even after they locked Michael up, that stuff didn't just vanish. She still had nightmares about Jennifer's last moments, still had days she was stuck in bed, still had to pop pills to keep her anxiety from going wild. Robert got hit with what Dr. Green called complicated grief, a deeper, more intense kind of pain that just messes up your whole life. He ghosted his friends and family, lost interest in stuff he used to love, and was drowning in guilt, feeling like it was his fault. "I was her dad," he told his therapist. "I was supposed to protect her. I failed. And no matter what anyone said that he couldn't have known, that he did everything right, that what Michael did wasn't on him, none of it could cut through that guilt." Tyler and Brandon had to deal with sibling grief, which is something people sleep on when the parents are falling apart. They lost their big sister, their protector, the one they looked up to. But they also had to watch their parents crumble and felt like they had to be the strong ones to not make things worse. Tyler got hit with bad anxiety and couldn't get into a real relationship. He was scared to get close to anyone, thinking they'd get snatched away too. Brandon turned his pain into rage, was getting into scraps in high school, and almost dropped out before a counselor made him see he was just acting out his grief. But the pain, it wasn't just in the family, you feel me. Jennifer's whole crew, the people she worked with, her classmates, they were all carrying deep scars from what went down. Her friend, Amanda Wilson, got hit with that survivor's guilt. Straight up, she was supposed to work a double that day. And if she had, Jennifer might have stayed at the diner, might have missed that call from Christopher, might have dodged that bullet. Amanda knew it was crazy talk, but those what-ifs were eating her alive. Christopher Davis, Jennifer's boyfriend, man, his grief was on a whole other level, second only to her fam. He was the one who found her, got pinned as the prime suspect, and had to live with the whole town giving him the side eye for years, even after the cops cleared him. The trauma of that night, walking in, seeing Jennifer like that, the blood, the flies, that smell, it gave him nightmares for over a decade. He hit therapy hard, got slapped with a PTSD diagnosis, and battled addiction for years before getting clean in 2016. When the cops finally cuffed Michael Clark, it was like a weight lifted for Christopher, proof he wasn't the monster, proof the cops and the whole damn town had it wrong. But then came the rage. This dude, this stranger, took the love of his life and let him take the fall, let him live in that shadow for years. At the sentencing, Christopher's words, read by the judge, hit like a ton of bricks. "Yo, Michael Clark, you didn't just take Jennifer that night. You tried to wreck me, too. You let me be the one to find her. You let everyone think I did it. You sat back and watched me suffer and didn't say a damn thing. I lost 13 years of my life to all this grief and guilt and pain. I couldn't get close to nobody, because I was so broken. I couldn't trust a soul, because the cops made me feel like a killer. I wanted to check out so many times, because living without Jen, with everyone thinking I did it, was a living hell. But I'm still here. I survived, and you're going away forever. I hope you think about what you did every single damn day. I hope you never get a second of peace. Drop a comment and tell me what case you want to get into next, because these stories ain't just headlines. They remind us that behind every number is a real person, a real family caught in the storm. The science behind this genetic genealogy stuff is wild, for real, and you got to get it to see why it took so long to bag Michael Clark. See, the old DNA databases like CODIS, that's just for cats who've been locked up or arrested, maybe 20 million people, tops. If you ain't ever been in the system, you're a ghost. But these new spots, like GED match and family tree DNA, that's regular folks uploading their DNA to find their cousins. By 2024, these databases had over 3 million profiles. Aight, so check it. Here's the breakdown. When a perp leaves DNA at a scene, that DNA has markers passed down from their parents, grandparents, all the way back. Anyone who shares those ancestors is going to have some of the same markers. The closer you're related, the more you share. So even if the killer ain't in the system, maybe his third cousin is, or his second cousin once removed, or some distant relative from a whole other branch of the family tree. So these genetic genealogists, they take these long-shot matches and start building family trees backwards, finding the common ancestors. Then they build it forward through all the kids and grandkids to pinpoint everyone who could have that DNA. It's like reverse engineering a family with science. Man, it can take months, and you need a mountain of old-school paperwork, birth certificates, marriage licenses, census records, obituaries, anything that connects the dots. In Jennifer's case, Rebecca Thompson built out family trees with over 8,000 people on them before she zeroed in on Michael Clark. We're talking tracing families back 6 generations, cold calling distant relatives who had no clue why someone was asking about their great-great-uncle's kids. This was some top-tier detective-ish, mixing brand new science with old-fashioned grit. Then, bam, the breakthrough. Rebecca figured out all the DNA matches came from this one couple, Thomas and Mary Sullivan, who lived in Michigan way back in the 1880s. From there, she had to chase down the lines of their 11 kids and hundreds of descendants, cutting out the female lines because the DNA was male, ruling out people who died before 2009 or lived states away. Michael Clark popped up on the radar because he fit the bill perfectly. Right age, right spot, right family tree, no real alibi. And get this, that sketchy hand injury the day after Jennifer was killed. That trash pull was the nail in the coffin. Without Michael's actual DNA to match the crime scene sample, the genealogy stuff alone wouldn't have been enough to convict. Defense lawyers would have called it a long shot, too much room for error. But once they got his DNA off that beer can, and it was a perfect match to what was under Jennifer's fingernails, the game was over. There was nothing left to argue. Michael Clark was there. He did it, and he left the proof right on her. Using this DNA tech to solve crimes kicked up a whole storm about what's right and what's wrong, and we're still figuring it out. Privacy advocates were screaming that people who uploaded their DNA to find their roots never agreed to help bust their criminal relatives. They were spooked about genetic surveillance, a future where the cops have everyone's DNA on file. They pointed out it could be used to track people for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with solving crimes. Protesters, whistleblowers, you name it. But the victims' families fired back, saying public databases are, well, public. When you upload your DNA to GEDmatch, you click agree on the rules, and it says right there the cops might look at it. If you don't want that, don't upload it. They argued that catching killers and giving families closure was way more important than privacy worries, especially when the alternative is letting these monsters run free. The whole thing blew up in 2024 when states started trying to pass laws to control it. Some bills would have made cops get warrants just to search the databases. Others wanted to ban it completely. The law enforcement community pushed back hard, saying these rules would cripple a powerful tool and leave families with no justice. By early 2025, most of those new rules were dead in the water. The courts kept saying it was legal, and the public was all for using it to solve the heavy-duty crimes. Polls showed over 70% of Americans were cool with using genetic genealogy to catch murderers and rapists, even with the privacy risks. The wins were just too big to ignore, case after case getting solved, families getting answers, and dangerous people getting taken off the streets. Smash that one in the comments if you're vibing with this. 'Cause real crime stories teach you more about people than any fake stuff ever could. No cap. Michael Clark's life on the inside was a straight-up nightmare, just like you'd expect for a child murderer, because that's how the other inmates saw Jennifer. As a kid, prison's got its own street justice, and people who hurt kids or young women are at the bottom of the food chain. Michael got thrown in protective custody for his own good, locked in a box 23 hours a day with almost no one to talk to. He had no crew, no backup, no visitors, except his lawyers when they absolutely had to show up. His ex-wife Lisa and their 2 grown kids wanted nothing to do with him. They ghosted him, for real. When reporters hunted them down, they put out a statement through a lawyer. "We are disgusted by what Michael Clark did. We knew nothing about it and haven't talked to him in years. Our hearts are with the Martinez family. We don't claim him. He ain't one of us anymore." His brother James down in Florida said the same thing. He was sickened, ashamed to even share blood with a killer, and never wanted to hear Michael's name again. Prison records we got through public requests showed Michael was a model inmate, meaning he kept his head down, caused no drama, and stayed to himself. But guards also said he was sullen and uncommunicative. He ducked out of rehab programs, blew off therapy, and didn't join any prison activities. He just read, stared at the walls, and basically just existed. A shrink who checked him out in 2024 wrote that Michael was deep in depression but refused help. The report said, "Subject appears to have given up on life, shows no interest in appeals, states repeatedly that he deserves his punishment and wants to be left alone." The little bits that leaked out about Michael's confession laid out this twisted, sick obsession he had with Jennifer. According to sealed court docs, Michael had seen her at Betty's diner a bunch of times in 2009. He got hooked on her, hard. He was cooking up these weird fantasies in his head about being with her. Then he found her MySpace, saw she had a boyfriend, and something inside him just broke. Michael swore, and the cops could never prove it, that he just wanted to holler at Jennifer at first, to see if there was a spark. He said he bought the burner phone to ask her out, but when she said she had a man, he spit some lie about being a friend of a friend who needed a hand. He lured her to that empty house planning to, what, steal her from Christopher, jump her. Even he couldn't straight up say what he was going to do. What's crystal clear is that the second Jennifer showed up, realized he was a total stranger, and tried to bounce, he went off. He blocked her path, grabbed her, and when she fought back, screaming, scratching, trying to get away, he whipped out a blade he had on him and went at her. He said he just snapped, but the evidence screamed otherwise. 17 stab wounds ain't just snapping, that's a straight-up, cold-blooded execution. They never found the blade. Michael claimed he chucked it in a river between Marshall and Bellevue but couldn't remember where. Divers hit a few spots but came up with zip. It didn't matter, the DNA evidence was a slam dunk, and Michael's confession filled in all the blanks the science couldn't. Michael's case showed the most messed up part of it all, the terrifying randomness. Jennifer didn't do a single thing wrong. She was just living her life, slinging hash at a diner, being nice to people, 'cause that's who she was. This psycho just threw all his sick daydreams on her and then took her life when she didn't play along. There was no lesson to learn, no move she could have made. There was no way she could have dodged this bullet. It was just bad luck. That randomness is what haunted Karen Martinez the most. People are always looking for a reason, she said. They want to believe Jennifer did something to put herself in danger, so they can tell themselves it won't happen to them. But she didn't do anything. She just existed. She was pretty, and she was nice, and that was enough for this monster to kill her. That's the terrifying truth. Sometimes there ain't no reason, no logic, no way to protect yourself from pure evil. The Marshall Police Department did a deep dive on their handling of Jennifer's case after they locked Michael up, trying to see if they could have cracked it sooner. The review found the OG investigation was solid for the tools they had back in 2009. They bagged and tagged the DNA right. They grilled all the witnesses. They ran the evidence by the book. The whole problem was, Michael Clark was a ghost, not in any database, no priors, and no clear connection to Jennifer. But they did find one what-if moment. When Michael hit the ER on July 26, 2009 for that cut on his hand, the doc who stitched him up thought it looked like he'd been in a scrap, not some work accident. But the doc never called the cops, and back in 2009, there was no system for hospitals to flag suspicious injuries. They've fixed that mess in Michigan now. Hospitals have to report injuries that look like they came from a violent crime, and the cops are supposed to check those reports against their open cases. If that system was in place back in 2009, and if the doc had made that call, and if the detectives had followed up and noticed Michael lived near Jennifer, and if they'd gotten a warrant for his DNA, that's a whole lot of ifs, right? But maybe they could have cracked this case in weeks, not 14 years. But hey, hindsight is 2020. All you can do is learn from it, and make sure you don't mess up the next one. Tag somebody who's deep into true crime, because Jennifer's story isn't just about one murder, it's about the whole game. How we hunt down killers, how we handle evidence, and how we treat the families left behind. The cost of these cold case investigations is something most folks never even think about. When Jennifer's case went cold in 2010, the Marshall PD basically had to ice it. They put the evidence in storage, kept the file open, but they weren't putting bodies or money on it. That's just the reality for small-town cops. You can't be blowing your whole budget on a dead-end case when you got new crimes popping off every day. Back when genetic genealogy first popped off, the price tag was insane. Parabon Nanolabs was charging anywhere from $3,500 to $15,000, all depending on how deep they had to dig into the family tree. For a department running on a shoestring budget, that was a massive hit they'd have to sell to the city suits and the people paying taxes. That's the real reason the Martinez family had to hit up GoFundMe. The cops couldn't, or maybe wouldn't, front the cash for it. But you got to look at what that $23,000 really bought. It cracked a murder case, put a name to a monster, gave a family some peace, and yanked a predator off the streets. It delivered justice for a girl who couldn't ask for it. Even if you're just talking cold hard cash, forget the human part for a second, that's a crazy good return. Stack that against the cost to lock someone up for 1 year, about $35,000 nationally, or the price of a full-blown trial, which can hit $100,000 easy, and suddenly, that gene tech looks dirt cheap. Jennifer's case getting solved made everybody start talking loud about bankrolling these cold cases. A bunch of states, Michigan included, set up grant money just for this DNA deep dive stuff. The feds, through the Department of Justice, finally threw some real money at these forgotten files. Private crews and non-profits like the Justice for Victims Initiative jumped in to plug the holes. By 2025, the money wasn't the brick wall it used to be, but the smaller departments were still struggling to get in the game. The other price you got to pay is time on the clock. This gene tech wasn't a magic wand, it was just another tool in the box, and you still had to do the grunt work. Once Rebecca Thompson flagged Michael Clark as their guy, Detective Mitchell had to hit the pavement hard, confirm every detail, build the case brick by brick, snatch up that final piece of proof, and get it all ready for the DA. We're talking hundreds of hours of straight-up grind. Mitchell figured she burned over 500 hours on Jennifer's case alone between 2020 and 2023, time she had to steal from her other active cases. For the big city departments with their own cold case squads, that's doable. But for a small-town operation like Marshall, where detectives are juggling everything at once, it's a hell of a strain. Mitchell basically worked Jennifer's case on her own time, nights, weekends, because she was obsessed with getting it done. You can't count on every cop having that fire, and departments shouldn't have to run on fumes and favors to close murder books. The fix, the people with the money said, was to build regional cold case units that a bunch of small towns could share, pull in their cash and their best minds. By 2025, a few states were already running with that playbook. Michigan rolled out a statewide cold case task force, setting up shops in different spots. They were staffed with stone-cold veteran investigators whose only job was to breathe life back into dead-end cases. They had all the new toys: genetic genealogy, next-level forensics, profilers who could get inside a killer's head. They could parachute in and take over cases from small-town departments that were flat-out broke and outgunned. In its first year, that task force put up staggering numbers. They ID'd suspects in 17 cold cases, slapped the cuffs on 6 of them, and finally brought answers to families who'd been trapped in limbo for decades. Jennifer's case was the poster child, the prime example of what happens when you mix new tech with old-school grit and the cash to make it happen. They had Karen Martinez speak at the launch ceremony, and she told all those cops, "You're giving hope to families like mine. You're telling us our loved ones still matter, that justice ain't got a sell-by date, that someone is still in the fight for them." That's everything. Drop a 2 in the comments if you called that twist way before we got here, because even when you know the ending, it's the grimy details that make these cases hit so hard. The media frenzy around Jennifer's case was a whole other beast, and it wasn't always a good thing. Back in 2009, when she was first killed, the local news was all over it. Teenager gone, suspicious death, heartbroken family. But as the trail went cold and months bled into years, the cameras disappeared. By 2012, Jennifer's name only popped up on the anniversary of her death, July 25th, in these quick little hits that just said the case was still dead in the water. But when they cuffed Michael Clark in 2022, the circus came roaring back to town. Every news channel in Michigan was on it like a shark on blood. The national players swooped in: CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. All of them ran segments. True crime podcasts dropped emergency episodes. YouTube channels picked every detail apart. Reddit threads went wild, debating every piece of evidence. Jennifer's story, a ghost for most people, was suddenly headline news across the nation. Karen Martinez was torn up about all the attention. Yeah, it kept Jennifer's memory out there, screaming that she was a real person whose life was stolen. But on the flip side, some of the coverage was just grimy, turning her tragedy into a freak show, more interested in the bloody details than the girl they lost. Some of these true crime hustlers treated it like a game, cracking jokes, spinning wild theories, chasing clout off her family's pain. One of the worst was this YouTube channel that dropped a video called Hot Murder. Small town girl, brutally stabbed by obsessed stalker. Shocking details. The thumbnail was Jennifer's smiling graduation pic, right next to crime scene tape, and those stupid shock face emojis. Karen was sickened. She hit up the creator, begged them to take it down. They shot her down, hid behind the First Amendment, said it was all public record. Legally, they weren't wrong. Morally, they were pure trash. And that just blew the lid off a bigger problem with the whole true crime scene. Where's the line between telling a story and just picking at the bones of a tragedy? When does being curious turn into sick entertainment? How do you square free speech with just having some damn respect for the dead and the people they left behind? There ain't no easy answers, but the Martinez family suited up and became fighters for doing true crime the right way. Karen linked up with some of the legit true crime creators, the ones with a conscience, to draw up some ground rules for covering these cases with respect. The list was simple. Always say the victim's name and tell their story, not just the killers. No clickbait crap in the titles or thumbnails. Cut the graphic gore, unless it's critical to the story. Try to reach out to the family before you go live. Kick back some of the profits to victims' rights groups. And never forget that these are real people, real families, real pain. Some creators got on board with the guidelines. Others just blew them off. The true crime world stayed split down the middle. You had the ones who were in it for the victims and to see justice done, and you had the ones who were just in it for the clicks, the subs, and the cash. The Martinez family learned to just tune out the vultures and work with the real ones who actually wanted to honor Jennifer's life while telling her story. All that media heat did have some good come out of it, though. It put a spotlight on cold cases and the power of genetic genealogy. It lit a fire under other families to start pushing for another look at their own loved ones' unsolved cases. It put pressure on police departments to stop letting these files gather dust. And it showed everybody that science and pure, stubborn grit could crack even the toughest nuts. Jennifer's case became a beacon of hope for thousands of other families still waiting in the dark for justice. One wild thing that came from all the news was that people started crawling out of the woodwork with stories about Michael Clark. A woman from Battle Creek said he stalked her back in 2007, followed her home from her job night after night until she finally told him she was calling the cops, and he vanished. A guy from Kalamazoo said he got into it with Michael at a bar in 2010 and Clark pulled a blade on him before other people jumped in. Nobody had ever called the cops on him for any of it. The investigators started digging, trying to see if Michael was tied to any other unsolved crimes, especially attacks on young women in that mid-Michigan area between 2005 and 2015. They ran his DNA against a bunch of other cold cases but came up empty. They went to see him in prison, tried to get him to talk about anyone else he might have hurt, but Michael just clammed up. He said he copped to Jennifer's murder, and that was the end of the story. The consensus from the investigators was that Jennifer was probably his one and only. The murder had all the signs of being impulsive, a total mess, the act of a guy who'd been obsessing and just finally snapped. Serial cats. They usually have a pattern, a certain type of victim, a signature way of doing things, and they get bolder over time. Michael didn't fit that mold. He was what the profilers call a situational killer, someone who went off in one specific, high-pressure moment, and probably wouldn't do it again unless that exact same fuse was lit. That didn't make what happened to Jennifer any less of a nightmare, but it meant other families didn't have to lie awake, wondering if Michael was the monster who took their daughters, too. Jennifer was his victim, his crime, his permanent stain on the world, and he was going to spend every last second of his life rotting in a cage for what he did to her. Hit me in the comments if you'd heard about this case before, because even though it went down in some small Michigan town, it sent shockwaves through forensic science all across the country. Michael Clark's trial, even though it ended with a guilty verdict, exposed some seriously messed up holes in how the courts deal with DNA and a person's right to privacy. His defense lawyer, Thomas Bradley, went hard on the argument that the whole genetic genealogy thing violated Michael's Fourth Amendment rights because the cops used his family's DNA without ever getting their permission. The judge shot it down, but the question he raised was legit, and the courts are still wrestling with it. So here's the legal trap. You spit in a tube and upload your DNA to one of those public sites. You're saying yes to sharing your own genetic code. But are you also saying yes for your relatives who never signed up? Your DNA is a snitch on your siblings, your parents, your kids, your cousins, people who might want to keep their own genetic secrets locked down from everybody, especially the law. By putting your own DNA out there, are you violating their privacy? For the most part, the courts have said, nah, you're not blowing up anyone's spot, because you're only sharing your own info. The fact that genealogists can use your data to connect the dots to your relatives is just the way the science works. It's no different than telling someone my cousin's a redhead or my brother's a giant. You're sharing stuff anyone can see that just happens to be tied to your genes. But some of the legal eagles said that was way too simple. Genetic code is different. It's a unique fingerprint, and it's deeply personal. It can spill secrets about diseases you might get, where your people came from, family skeletons you want to keep buried. When the cops use this tech, they're building out massive family trees of hundreds of innocent people who never agreed to be part of a murder investigation. How is that not a massive invasion of privacy? The comeback argument, and the one that's been winning in court, is that solving a murder is more important than those privacy worries, especially when the DNA they're using was put out there for the world to see. If you don't want your genes getting used by the cops, then don't upload your DNA to a public site. Use one of the services that tells the law to kick rocks, or just don't do the test at all. It's your call. But you can't put your business on the street and then get mad when the public, including the police, takes a look. This whole fight is probably going to rage on for years as this tech gets more common and more powerful. What's going to happen when sequencing your entire genome is cheap and easy? When every single person's complete genetic blueprint is out there for the taking? When cops can guess what a suspect looks like, how they act, what they might do, all from a speck of DNA left at a crime scene? The sci-fi crap is becoming real life faster than the laws can keep up. For the Martinez family, all this high-minded debate didn't mean squat compared to the bottom line. Genetic genealogy put a name to their daughter's killer, and that's all that mattered. They got the privacy concerns. They really did. But they also knew that without this tech, Michael Clark would have gotten away with it. He'd be out there, free, maybe even hunting for another young woman, while Jennifer's case file collected dust forever. That was the other option, and it was no option at all. The trial also put on full display the raw power of DNA evidence with a jury. The second the prosecutor laid out the DNA match between Michael and the sample from the crime scene, it was game over. His lawyer, Bradley, tried to throw up some smoke, talking about contamination or a lab screw-up, but the jury wasn't buying a word of it. DNA is the new gold standard if you've got it. A conviction is practically in the bag. If you don't, you've got a much tougher fight on your hands, and that creates its own set of problems. DNA evidence is a heavy hitter, but it ain't bulletproof. Labs screw up, samples get contaminated, evidence gets mislabeled. And all DNA really tells you is that someone was there. It doesn't tell you why they were there, or what they did. In Michael's case, the DNA was under Jennifer's fingernails from where she clawed at him, which was a stone-cold lock. But in other cases, DNA can tell a much fuzzier story. But hold up, defense lawyers are starting to clap back at what they call DNA worship. This idea that DNA evidence is always the gospel truth and the final word. They're schooling juries, breaking down how the science has limits, how your DNA can end up somewhere without you ever being there, and how the numbers can be twisted to tell a lie. This is a real check, because innocent people have been locked up over some bogus DNA hype. In Michael Clark's world, though, that DNA evidence was rock solid. We're talking multiple, separate tests, all screaming his name. And the DNA wasn't just anywhere, it was under the victim's fingernails, a straight-up sign of a violent struggle. There was no way to explain that away. You add that to him confessing, the shady injury he had the next day, and him having no alibi? Man, the DNA just slammed the door on his whole life. Putting him away gave Jennifer's family a little bit of quiet, but it didn't silence all the damn questions. They were still haunted, trying to figure out why Michael zeroed in on Jennifer. His whole story that he got obsessed after clocking her at the diner, it just felt thin, you know. Was he creeping on her harder than he let on? Were there other run-ins they never knew about? Did Jennifer see him coming, feel that danger, try to duck and weave? These are questions that are probably going to stay buried forever. Michael ain't saying nothing more than his quick confession. and there's no proof to show how deep his twisted obsession really went. Karen Martinez said she had to let go of needing all the answers. "I know who took my daughter, and I know he's locked down for life," she said. "I know Jennifer fought him, got his DNA under her nails, and that's how we got his ass. I know she didn't suffer long, thank God. The rest of the details, I don't need them. They won't change a thing or bring my baby back." Drop a line in the comments if you think justice was really served here, because that's the bottom line. Ain't it does a conviction even mean justice? The whole idea of justice gets twisted up when you're talking about murder. Michael Clark got hit with the heaviest sentence Michigan could throw at him, life in a cage, with no chance of ever seeing the sun as a free man. He ain't ever getting out. He's gonna die in there, just another forgotten ghost. By the book, justice was served. They caught the monster, ran him through the system, and threw away the key. But for Jennifer's family, justice is a whole different beast than some judge's ruling. Justice would be Jennifer still breathing. Justice would be her teaching little kids, starting her own family, living that whole life that got snatched from her. Justice would be her walking through that door, laughing, saying, "Y'all ain't gonna believe my day." A prison sentence, even for life, don't bring her back. It don't fix what's broken. It don't fill that black hole in the Martinez family that's gonna be there till their last breath. What the conviction did give them was accountability and a final chapter. Michael Clark was forced to answer for what he did. He couldn't play innocent, couldn't hide behind some legal smokescreen, couldn't run from the fallout of his actions. And the Martinez family got closure. They knew who killed Jennifer. They knew why as much as you can ever get a why for this madness. And they knew that dude would never hurt another soul. That ain't justice. Not really, but it's something. Robert Martinez broke it down like this. Justice is Jennifer being alive. What we got was payback, and I'm straight with that. Michael stole something priceless from us, so we snatched his freedom forever. It ain't equal, nothing could ever equal Jennifer's life, but it's the best we're gonna get in this world. The whole debate on what price a killer should pay has been going on for thousands of years. You got some folks who believe in rehab, that even killers can be fixed and deserve a second shot. Then you got others who are all about retribution, an eye for an eye, making murderers feel the pain their victims felt. Others are focused on deterrence, saying the punishment's got to be so harsh it scares off the next guy. And some just say lock 'em up and throw away the key. Keep the monsters caged so they can't hunt again. Michigan don't do the death penalty, so life without parole is the end of the line. Some victims' families wish they could flip that switch, believing it's the only real way to even the score. The Martinez family was split. Karen said she wasn't for the death penalty, but if Michigan had it, she'd have wanted it for Michael. Let him feel that terror, the same way Jennifer felt terror, she said. Let him know the exact second his life is over, just like Jennifer knew in her last moments. Robert saw it different. He thought life in prison was a worse fate than a needle. Death would be a quick escape for him, Robert shot back. Let him rot in a cell for 40 or 50 years. Let him stare at those walls every single day and think about what he did. Let him get old and sick and miserable with nothing but his own guilt eating him alive. That's 100 times worse than death. Tyler and Brandon, they both said they didn't give a damn what happened to Michael as long as he never walked free. He's a ghost, Tyler said. He's nothing. He ain't worth the energy or the space in our heads. He's been erased from the world, and that's all that matters. The whole argument over the right punishment for murder just gets down to a deeper question. What's the whole point of the justice system? Is it payback? Is it fixing people? Is it protecting the herd? Is it a warning shot? Everybody's got a different answer. There's no one right way. But the one thing everyone agreed on in Jennifer's case was that Michael Clark had to be taken off the board permanently. Whether he should suffer, be redeemed, or just be warehoused was a whole other fight. One piece of the justice puzzle that gets slept on is restorative justice, the idea that the bad guy should have to try and fix the damage they caused, not just do time for it. In a murder case, you can't ever truly restore anything because you can't bring someone back from the dead. But some families find a way to heal by meeting the killer, asking their own questions, unleashing their pain, and getting that person to finally admit the hell they caused. The Martinez family got the chance to get into a program like that, to sit down with Michael in a lockdown room with a mediator. It was voluntary for everyone. Michael could say no, the family could say no. At first, Karen wanted to do it, wanted to look that monster in the eye and scream why. But in the end, the family shut it down. What could he possibly say that would help? Robert asked. There's no explanation that makes it make sense or make it okay. He's a monster. I don't need to hear him try to justify this nightmare. Some families find that face-to-face is healing, that it gives them something they need. Others, like the Martinez, know that sitting across from their loved one's killer would be too much, or just a waste of breath. There's no right way to do it. It's deep in the soul, and everyone's got to walk through their own hell in their own way. What did help the Martinez family was linking up with other families who'd been dragged through the same fire. Through groups like the Justice for Victims Initiative, they met a whole crew of people who'd lost someone to violence and had to live through that cold case nightmare. Just knowing they weren't alone, that other people out there got the pain without them having to say a word, that was a comfort nothing else could touch. Karen got real tight with Susan Riley, whose daughter Emily was murdered back in Ohio in 2007. Emily's case was also cracked with genetic genealogy, and Susan and Karen clicked over that shared hell. They were on the phone all the time, hitting up victims' rights conferences together, holding each other up on the days they wanted to collapse. Susan gets it in a way no one else can, Karen said. She knows what it's like to get that call, to ID your own kid's body, to wait years for justice, to finally stare down the killer in court. We don't have to explain a damn thing to each other. These links between victims' families forged a whole new community of survivors who started fighting for each other and for real change in the system. They went hard pushing for more cash, for cold case units. They fought for new laws to protect victims. They raised hell to make sure people knew what families of the murdered really go through. Jennifer's death was a tragedy, but it sparked a fire, a movement of families screaming that no victim gets forgotten, no case gets shelved, and no family gets left in the dark. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button if you need more real stories like this. 'Cause these ain't just crime stories, they're stories about bouncing back, about a grind that never stops, and about the human spirit refusing to be broken by the darkness. The shockwaves from Jennifer's case went way beyond the courthouse, sparking a real conversation about violence against women. Jennifer was one of about 3,000 women murdered in the United States in 2009. She was killed because some dude got obsessed with her and felt like he was owed her time and attention. When she blew him off, or really, when she just didn't live up to the fantasy in his head, since they never even talked, he took her life. This whole script, a man getting violent with a woman who says no, is way too damn common. Activists used Jennifer's story to put a spotlight on the danger women are in just for being alive. Jennifer did everything by the book. She went to her job, was nice to customers like she was paid to be, and somehow that put a target on her back. The message was cold-blooded and terrifying. A woman can do everything right and still get taken out by some man's ego and rage. The talk around violence against women has changed a lot since 2009. The Me Too movement, kicking off in 2017, dragged sexual assault out of the shadows. Movements like Say Her Name put a focus on the violence hitting black women hard. Advocacy crews were on the front lines, pushing for stronger laws, for mandatory training for cops on how to handle this stuff, and for more money for programs to stop the violence before it starts. But the root of the problem was still there. Too many men felt like they had a right to women's attention, their bodies, their lives, and when they got told no, some of them snapped. The real question was how to flip the culture that builds these dudes, how to raise boys to respect a woman's no without getting aggressive. Karen Martinez jumped into that bigger fight, speaking at events about stopping the violence. She made it clear that Michael Clark wasn't some freak or some monster from another planet. He was a product of our world. Michael learned somewhere that women were here for his pleasure, Karen said in one speech. He learned that when a woman didn't give him what he wanted, it was a problem he had to fix. We have to stop teaching our boys this poison. We have to raise them to see women as whole human beings with their own lives, not just objects for male fantasies. That message hit home for a lot of people, but others pushed back, saying not all men are killers, and that all this talk about toxic masculinity was a low blow to good men. Karen's comeback was always the same. If you're a man who respects women, then this ain't about you. But if my words got you feeling defensive, maybe you need to ask yourself why. The conversation was raw, and it was ugly, but at least it was happening. Jennifer's death, and the deaths of thousands of women just like her, forced society to look in the mirror and face some hard truths about men hurting women. It was a slow grind, but it was a grind forward. One real change that came from all this noise was better training for the police on how to investigate crimes against women. Back in the day, cops would sometimes blow off women's reports of being stalked or harassed, telling them to call us back if he actually does something. By the time something happened, it was too late. The woman was hurt or dead, and the cops were left trying to solve a crime they might have stopped. After Jennifer's case and others that blew up, Michigan made it mandatory for all law enforcement to get trained on spotting the red flags of escalating violence, on taking women's fears seriously, and on getting ahead of threats before they explode. If a woman reported being stalked or harassed, cops had to log it, investigate the creep, and when it was serious, get restraining orders or slap on some charges. Could this have saved Jennifer? Real talk, maybe not. She never clocked that Michael was creeping on her, so she never dropped a dime. But other women, they might get saved if the cops start taking their fears seriously before things go sideways. Staying ahead of the game is always better than cleaning up the mess after. School programs also got a glow up, teaching kids the real deal about healthy relationships, consent, and respect. By 2025, Michigan made it mandatory for all high schools to run deep on these topics. Students learn to spot the red flags in a toxic situation, to get that nobody owes you their time or affection, and how to take a no without bugging out. The hope was to raise a new generation that wouldn't repeat the same old mistakes. Of course, you had haters claiming these programs were a waste of time, that everyone already knew this stuff, and that it was throwing shade on all dudes. But the real ones clapped back, saying if even one person learned enough to not turn violent, it was all worth it. And let's be real, with violence against women still off the charts, 1 out of 4 deals with it from a partner, 1 out of 5 gets assaulted. It's dead obvious, not everyone got the memo. Jennifer's legacy blew up, becoming way bigger than just her case. She became a symbol, a wake-up call, a reason to get loud. Her name was on the lips of everyone at rallies and vigils for victims of violence. Her face popped up in slideshows about cracking cold cases and stopping the madness. Her story got told over and over, each time hammering home the same point. Women's lives matter. This has to stop. And justice might be slow, but you better believe we're coming for it. Yo, drop a comment and tell me what case you want to get into next, because every story we put out there keeps a victim's name alive and puts society on notice to do better. As 2025 rolled on, the Martinez family started finding their new rhythm. It was coming up on 16 years since Jennifer was taken, and over 2 years since they put Michael Clark behind bars. That sharp, stabbing pain had faded to a constant ache, always there, but they could manage. They were learning to live with the void, to find some light in the world, even with the hole Jennifer left behind. Karen kept grinding with the Justice for Victims Initiative, now running the whole show as the executive director. The work fueled her, turning her pain into power. Every case they helped crack, every family they brought answers to, felt like a tribute to Jennifer. By early 2025, the organization had fronted the cash for genetic genealogy on over 200 cold cases, leading to 43 arrests and 27 convictions. 43 families got what the Martinez family fought for: answers, accountability, and a little bit of peace. Robert, her dad, got deep into woodworking, spending hours in the garage crafting furniture. He built this incredible cedar chest that he kept in Jennifer's room, packed with her stuff, her high school diploma, her acceptance letter to Western Michigan University, photos, letters, all the little pieces of her life. He also made rocking chairs for Tyler and Brandon, telling them these were heirlooms for their own kids, the nieces and nephews Jennifer would never get to meet. Tyler was absolutely killing it as a teacher. His 5th grade class thought he was the man, and he got a rep around school for being patient and creative. He'd met a woman named Sarah, a teacher too, and they'd been solid for a year. It was his first real relationship since Jennifer's death. He was finally in a place where he could let someone in, to trust he could love again without losing them. Sarah knew the whole story about Jennifer. She got Tyler's pain, and she loved him through all of it. Brandon had made detective with the Battle Creek PD back in 2024. He was mostly on property crimes, but he'd jump in on the heavy cases when they needed him. He took the lessons from Jennifer's case to his own work, locking down evidence tight, actually listening to victims, and never giving up on a case just because the trail went cold. He earned a rep for being thorough and all in, a dude who genuinely cared about the victims and their families. The Martinez family still held down July 25th as Jennifer's Day. They'd hit her grave in the morning, bring fresh flowers, trade stories. Then they'd slide over to the memorial garden on Creek Road and just sit on the bench, watching the birds, feeling the sun, just remembering. At night, they'd all link up at Karen and Robert's for dinner, making all of Jennifer's favorite grub lasagna, garlic bread, Caesar salad, chocolate cake. They'd toast to her, and yeah, they'd cry, but they'd laugh too, holding each other down through another anniversary. But check it. It wasn't just pure sadness anymore. They could talk about Jennifer without completely falling apart. They could crack up about the funny things she used to say or do. They could celebrate the 18 years they got with her instead of just drowning in the grief for the years they lost. The grief was something they carried now, not something that crushed them. It was always there, but it didn't run their lives anymore. One of the realest things for the family was connecting with the students who got the Jennifer Martinez Memorial Scholarship. Every year, these kids would write to the family, thanking them and talking about their own dreams of becoming teachers. The family would invite them to meet up, and those meetings were tough but beautiful. These young cats were living the dream Jennifer never got to, and by doing that, they were keeping her spirit alive. In 2024, one of the scholarship kids, a young woman named Ashley, told the Martinez family something that hit them hard. I read about what happened to her and how she wanted to teach kids and make them feel safe and valued, Ashley said, with tears rolling down her face. I thought, someone needs to do that for her. Someone needs to live that dream. So I am. Karen just hugged Ashley and cried, telling her Jennifer would be so proud that she was proud. Christopher Davis was still holding it down in Ohio, but he stayed tight with the Martinez family. He'd call on Jennifer's birthday and on the day she died, every year. He'd gotten married in 2024 to a good woman named Emily, who understood his past and his pain. He told Emily everything about Jennifer before he even proposed, making sure she knew Jennifer would always be a part of his story, his first love. Emily got it and accepted it. At their wedding, Christopher wore a small pin with Jennifer's initials, keeping her close even as he started his new chapter. The town of Marshall had healed up too, even though the case was now burned into its history. The diner where Jennifer worked had a permanent memorial for her picture behind the counter, that said Jennifer Martinez, 1991 to 2009. Forever in our hearts. New folks who moved to Marshall would hear the story eventually, probably at some town event when the old-timers started sharing local history. Jennifer's murder was Marshall's warning, its ghost story, its reminder that evil can pop up anywhere. But Marshall was also defined by how it rallied after Jennifer's death, how the whole community had her family's back, how people refused to let her memory fade. The annual vigil on July 25th, even though it was smaller now, still pulled in dozens of people. The high school named a scholarship for her. The library set up a reading nook in her memory, a chill spot with all her favorite books on the shelves. Marshall got hurt bad by what happened to Jennifer, but it healed up stronger. Smash that like button if this story's got you locked in, because we're hitting the final stretch, and I got to know you're still riding with me for the last hard lessons. Michael Clark's life in the joint was just a downward spiral, a total dumpster fire. By 2025, he'd been locked up for 3 years with no light at the end of the tunnel. His health was shot, he had diabetes and high blood pressure, and both were out of control cause he wouldn't listen to the doctors or take his meds. He'd packed on a ton of weight from that starchy prison food and doing nothing all day. He looked way older than his 61 years. The prison logs showed he was basically a ghost. No visitors, except his lawyers, nobody on his call list, no mail but legal junk. He was completely on his own, cut off from the world by his own foul choices and by everyone who ever knew him. The other inmates steered clear of him because of what he did. The guards just treated him like a number, doing their job and nothing more. The yearly psych evals showed Michael was still in a dark place, maybe thinking about checking out, though he always denied it. In his 2025 review, he told the shrink, "I'm already dead. Been dead since they cuffed me. This is just my body going through the motions. I don't want to live, but I ain't got the guts to end it. So I'm just waiting for my heart to give out, or cancer to get me, or whatever." The shrink asked if Michael felt any remorse for what he did to Jennifer. "I think about her every single day," he said. "I see her face, the way she looked when it happened. I have nightmares about it. I can't get away from it. If that's remorse, then yeah, I got it. But it don't change a damn thing. She's still gone. Her family still hates my guts. I'm still in here forever. Remorse is just another kind of torture. Now, was Michael's remorse legit, or just him feeling sorry for himself? Who knows? He never tried to say sorry to the Martinez family after that weak statement in court. Never wrote a letter. Never asked to see them. Never tried to explain himself or give them any more details. He was just a body in a cell, waiting for the lights to go out for good. From the system's point of view, Michael Clark was getting exactly the sentence he earned. From a human point of view, his whole existence was a cautionary tale about how hate and entitlement can destroy not just the victim, but the person pulling the trigger, too. Michael had been a regular guy, not a good one, for real, but he wasn't some monster you could spot a mile away. He had jobs, paid bills, had a family. Then he made a string of choices fueled by obsession that led to murder, and those choices wrecked his life just as bad as they ended Jennifer's. But the real difference, the thing you can't forget, is that Michael chose his fate. Jennifer didn't choose a thing. She was just an innocent caught in the crossfire of his sickness. He's got the rest of his life to chew on that fact, to live knowing he threw his freedom away to steal hers. And now they're both gone, she's dead, and he's living a dead man's life in a cage. The whole appeals game for Michael's case was pretty much over by 2025. His conviction was solid, upheld at every single level. His lawyers threw one last Hail Mary to the Michigan Supreme Court, arguing the genetic genealogy evidence was bogus, but the legal experts knew it had zero chance of working. The law was clear that DNA tech was legit, the methods were sound, and Michael's conviction was bulletproof. If the Michigan Supreme Court told him to kick rocks, Michael could try a federal petition, but that was a serious long shot. The feds almost never mess with state convictions, unless the trial was a total circus, which Michael's wasn't. He had a decent lawyer, a fair trial, and the right sentence. He even confessed. There was no legal angle left to play. Barring some kind of miracle, Michael Clark was going to die in prison. And with his health tanking, and him not giving a damn about himself, that day wasn't too far off. The average life expectancy for a male inmate is around 64 years, way lower than for people on the outside. Michael was 61 and a wreck. He might have 10 years left, if that. When he finally dies, nobody's going to come claim the body. His ex-wife and kids washed their hands of him. He had no other family that would even admit they knew him. The state will handle his remains, probably cremate him, and stick him in a prison cemetery with just a numbered marker to show Michael Clark ever existed. No one to mourn him, no service. Nobody remembering him as anything but the monster who murdered Jennifer Martinez. It was a lonely, pathetic end for a lonely, pathetic life. And you got to remember, he built that cage for himself. Yo, send this to your whole true crime crew, 'cause we're hitting the finish line, and the lessons here are for everybody. No cap. As we wrap up Jennifer Martinez's story, you gotta digest what went down and how this whole mess changed the game. Jennifer getting taken out was a straight-up tragedy. A bright light snuffed out way too soon. But how they finally closed her case, that next-level genetic tech, her family's non-stop hustle, the detectives, who wouldn't quit, that was a flicker of light in a real dark tunnel. The first lesson is simple. You never, ever fold. The Martinez family could have just accepted that Jennifer's case was a ghost. They could have let the grief eat him alive. But nah, they went to war. Karen was out there hustling up cash for testing, keeping Jennifer's name hot in the streets, refusing to let her fade away. That relentless grind, mixed with the new tech, is what brought justice home. If you're fighting for something real, you don't stop. Keep applying that pressure. Sometimes the big break comes when you're about to tap out. The second lesson. Science and tech are the ultimate equalizers for justice. This genetic genealogy game wasn't even a thing when Jennifer was murdered back in 2009. By 2020, it was solving cold cases all over the map. Man, who even knows what kind of heat they'll have in another 10 or 20 years? Cases that seem impossible today could get cracked wide open tomorrow. That's why you gotta bag and tag every piece of evidence, keep those case files on lock, and never put a cold case on the shelf. Justice might be late to the party, but it still shows up. The third lesson is all about your people, your community, and holding down the victims' families. The whole town of Marshall wrapped their arms around the Martinez family. They showed up, threw down money, and just kept them standing. That support was their oxygen, for real. If someone in your circle is dealing with some heavy loss, don't duck them, 'cause because you're scared to say the wrong thing. Pull up, be there. Let them know they ain't walking that road alone. The fourth lesson is about staying sharp and staying safe without getting all paranoid. What happened to Jennifer was a random, tragic hit, and there wasn't a whole lot she could have done different. But there are street smarts everyone needs to have. Be careful what you put out there online. Always let your crew know where you're at. Meet strangers on neutral ground, and trust your gut when it starts screaming at you. You can't eliminate every threat, but you can make yourself a harder target. The fifth lesson is about checking and calling out the violence against women. Jennifer died because some dude felt he owned her, and when reality didn't line up with his twisted fantasy, he got violent. That same sick pattern plays out every day behind closed doors, on the streets, with stalkers, with murder. As a society, we gotta step up our game, teach respect and consent, jump in when we see the red flags, back up the victims, and make sure the ones doing the dirt are held accountable. And the final lesson is about finding a purpose in the pain. Jennifer's death was senseless, it was wrong, and nothing can ever make that right. But the Martinez family chose to build something good out of their agony. The scholarship fund, the fight for justice, the support for other families, all that stuff honors Jennifer's memory and helps other people. When tragedy hits, you can let it wreck you, or you can flip it into something that helps the world. The Martinez family chose to flip it. Jennifer Martinez would be 34 years old in 2025. She'd probably be married, maybe got a couple of kids. She'd be in a classroom somewhere, inspiring little ones, changing their whole world. She'd be at family cookouts, taking trips with her parents, being the cool aunt to Tyler and Brandon's kids. She'd be living a full, real, meaningful life. Michael Clark stole all of that from her. He jacked her future, her potential, her dreams. He brought an ocean of pain to her family and her city. He committed an act so evil it can never be erased or forgiven. But he didn't get the W. Jennifer's spirit lives on, in the students getting scholarships to become teachers. It's alive in the cold cases getting solved using the same moves from her investigation. It's in the laws getting rewritten to protect people better. It's in the families finally getting peace because of the fight in her name. It's in that small memorial garden where people are still leaving flowers 16 years after she was gone. Evil might have taken Jennifer's life, but love, grit, science, and justice took every last thing from her killer. It ain't the same nothing could be, but it's something. It's the best this messed up world can do. And it's got to be enough, because it's all we got. So remember Jennifer Martinez. Remember the girl who wanted to teach, who loved her fam, who had her whole life ready to pop off. Remember that she mattered, that her death wasn't for nothing, that justice came for her even when all hope seemed lost. And remember the rules her story lays down. Never quit, have your people's back, use every tool in the box to fight for justice, protect the vulnerable, and flip tragedy into something that matters. Justice for Jennifer Martinez. Finally, fully, forever. The story of Jennifer Martinez, the girl from Marshall, Michigan, is officially closed. Her killer is locked down for life. Her family has found a way to live with a hole in their hearts. Her legacy pushes on through scholarships, advocacy, and the dozens of cold cases now being solved with the same playbook that caught her murderer. If you listened all the way through, I see you. Thank you. Thanks for caring about Jennifer's story, for remembering her, for understanding that every true crime case is about a real person whose life was everything. This stuff ain't just for kicks. It's education. It's a warning. It's a memorial. It's a demand for what's right. Stay safe out there. Look out for your people. Trust your instincts. Fight for what's right. And never, ever forget that every victim deserves to be remembered. Every case deserves to be closed. And every family deserves to know the truth. Drop a comment below if you want me to break down more stories like this. Tell me what case you want to hear about next. And if Jennifer's story hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because the more we tell these stories, the more we remember the victims, the more we demand justice, the harder we make it for evil to win. Jennifer Martinez, 1990, 1 to 2009, gone but never forgotten. Her story will echo on, a reminder that justice can take years, but it's coming, always.